sing their love to the ground. Lonely but free I'll be found, drifting along with the tumbling tumbleweeds. Cares of the past are behind, nowhere to go but I'll find just where the trail will wind, drifting along with a tumbling tumbleweed.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? Welcome to Goes to the Library. I'm your host, Shaun, and with me, as always, on Goes to the Library is my good buddy, Big Paul. What's going on, Big Paul?
Hey, how you doing, buddy?
Oh, my God. So we are finally here. This is a review that's been almost a year in the making. August last year is when I brought it up to you. We were supposed to do it in September, and then my life just, kept blowing up last year, so it kept getting pushed back. But finally, we're here. We're going to be talking about Cormac McCarthy's 1985 novel, Blood Meridian, or The Evening Red of the West, which is not really an or, actually. It's actually a statement of fact, which we'll get into. But, yeah, I'm very excited to be talking about this. And this is your first Cormac McCarthy novel, right? It's my second one.
My first Cormac McCarthy novel, man. It is good. And I'm here to prepare for it with some Mormon juice, aka High West whiskey.
There you go.
A distillery out there in the West. I thought it was apropos for this. But yeah, man, my first Cormac McCarthy. So I was right here on my cover. It says, the author of The Road. And I was like, oh, is that the same road with my man Viggo Strider? If fact check, it is. So yeah. My first
that's what I like, because even before I had read any Cormac McCarthy, I think I was already familiar with him because of movies. I had seen All the Pretty Horses, which is an adaptation of one of his books. Billy Bob Thornton directed that. Matt Damon, Penelope Cruz. I had seen No Country for Old Men. Actually, I saw that with Big Paul. Actually, that's kind of a funny story, because we lived in Alaska, and Paul's now wife, then girlfriend, bought our tickets. We were all broke. And she bought our tickets. She kind of did us a solid, and she was like, yeah, let's get out. Let's go out. Let's go have some fun. Let's blow off some steam or whatever. And we go see the movie. And that, kind of left her in dire financial straits because she bought everybody's tickets. And she hated the movie so much. She started crying in the hallway.
I don't remember that.
You don't remember that?
No. I just remember paying her back with my love, and then
obviously, yeah. And now look at you.
Yeah, I know.
Looks like we made it. No Country for Old Men. Don't worry about it, baby.
17 years later and 3 kids, man. Boom.
But yeah, so we saw that No Country for Old Men. So we kind of through cultural osmosis in some respect, we were at least somewhat familiar with him. I read The Road back when the movie came out. Right before the movie came out, as often is the case, you hear somebody's going to make a movie about something, like a book you've always been curious about, and you're like, oh, I'm going to check it out. So what was your experience? I like Cormac McCarthy. I think he's a unique, odd writer, but I really enjoy his work, at least what I've experienced of it so far.
Yeah.
How did you find coming to Blood Meridian and his particularly the way he writes? Yeah, because I did not warn you about that. I think you just experienced that, right?
Yeah. I fucking hated it. This was a stupid book, and I cannot believe I only read this out of sheer love for my good buddy Shaun. And that's all I have to say about it. Good night.
That's it. Good night, everybody.
Yeah. No, man. No. So, as you said, this has been a labor of love getting through it, and I read the first 80 pages of this 3 different times since August of last year.
Actually, I've read the first 100 pages about 3 times. Yeah.
Yeah. And I would say around chapter 6 is like when you start getting into the groove and noticing it, because I mean, like what he's notorious for, right, is his prose, no punctuations and all that other stuff and what have you. So that coupled with it takes place in the 1800s, and the language used, at that time, the way he's writing it. And then it was really, really hard for me to track with what narration, what kind of, this
Where
was
are we?
first
What are we
person
doing?
narration. Like what is this, right? And
Yeah.
so it took a while to get into that.
The cadence.
Yeah, exact
Yeah.
cadence. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. Yeah, but what I did, man, it like you get locked in. And what is particularly interesting, like about this, is just like well, it makes me feel really dumb. First of all, like,
Yeah, I hear you.
you go, I know, yeah, I'll read something and I'll think about it, and then like later on, I'll be like, oh, that's what he meant, or he's painting a picture, or like what?
Well, this is the great thing. This is the great thing about Cormac McCarthy as a writer, and I kind of understand that he's not going to be everybody's cup of tea. Like I do, it's not something you can really argue about. Like some people are not going to like his brutalist, like matter of fact, but also very florid prose. Like they're just not going to be able to engage with it. But what I think he does really great, there's tons of subtext in his books, but he very rarely ever draws your attention to it. He just paints such a vivid picture. He creates such an interesting scenario that the subtext presents itself, usually as an afterthought, because you're thinking about it, because of the difficulty of the prose, because you really have to pay attention.
Right.
Like your mind, you're trying to find, okay, where do the fucking commas go? Like where does the punctuation go? Like that's what your mind is trying to kind of piece it together as you're reading, which makes you pay attention to the language even more. And I think so much of the stuff there is just like, it's very adult. Like you have to pay attention. He doesn't hold your hand. He doesn't care if you don't understand. He is not going to explain it to you, even when he's explaining it to you.
Right.
Which is something that, especially I think Blood Meridian out of like the Road is way more straightforward. It's much more straightforward book, but it's written in kind of a similar way. But this one, Blood Meridian, I found really interesting, and I found myself like constantly drawn back to like reread stuff because I wasn't sure, because it is like there's a randomness to this story and the way that things unfold that kind of makes you feel like you're lost at times. Like you're like, I don't understand the sequence of events here. Like I don't understand what's happening here. And that's really true up until the end of the book. Like he has no care if you're not paying attention. And I kind of appreciated that, especially by the time you get to the end of it.
Well, like you said, he wrote it. You wrote it for adults, right? You got to look both ways before you cross the road. That's not my problem. You just, you either survive or don't. It's kind of like a little bit of Darwinism, right? But you cannot sleep on this book, man. You cannot sleep on this book. And what always kind of drives you down is his use of violence, like throughout the story. So like you can get in there in the minutia of the details where he's explaining something like a caveman or very repetitive about like the landscape or something that's out there, and the next thing you know, you're reading about some grotesque massacre or something vile or some devious thing that
he's constantly juxtaposing kind of the openness of the plains and the area and the barren nature of it, and wherever there is civilization, there's violence, there's death, there's destruction. And as we'll talk about in the story, that's kind of what they're doing. They're going through the South, collecting scalps, bringing death and destruction everywhere, destroying civilization itself in a microcosm, and the way he juxtaposes those things is it feels random when you're reading it sometimes, but it's not. It's not. It's very intentional. It's very there to kind of like bring you into this world. Like one moment you're sitting there, just sitting in the breeze, just looking at the plains, and the next minute you're seeing a group of Indians or something coming over a hill, and you just see the dust, and you're waiting for like the shoe to drop.
Yeah, man. Yeah. No, that's kind of like what I was alluding to. I'm like, oh, it made me feel dumb because after like a couple of reads or going back and rereading a paragraph, like, 3 more times before I feel like I can move on, and just like third time, I'm like, oh, I get it. This is what he's explaining right here.
Yeah.
This is what he's moaning. Like, oh, okay, shit. This is going to be a heap and pile of foreshadowing. It feels like, and like let's get into it. Like, but that's after going over it like several different times, So the whole thing, the entire novel from start to finish is completely like chock full of that stuff.
Well, I mean, we're going to skip just ahead for a second, but the epilogue is like a paragraph long, and it's like a fucking puzzle.
Mhm.
He's not explaining to you in like literal terms what like he's talking about. You know what I mean? Do you remember the epilogue? It's like
So,
it's a part where it's basically
right,
like
but he's talking about someone like like he's describing it like a very like like somebody has never seen this technology of like a post digger or something before. It is what I think is happening, that someone's leaving holes in there and then burnt torching the holes. I think he uses the term like striking the fire of a rock. Like
yeah,
just
that God put there. Yeah.
that God put there, right? And so it's just like this,
Well, it's a grand reinforcement of the themes of the book, which is that like um, nothing can be if something else didn't precede it.
hmm
So that's like, and I think it's actually like I think he's describing basically like historians and archaeologists coming back to the plains after like 100 years later
right.
and discovering the history that happened there, the unknown history that happened there, all the violence, all the stuff that's left behind, the bones. They're looking for bones. You know what I mean? Like, so,
Right.
because that's a big theme of the story is that like kind of, at least from certain characters' perspectives, that like
Yeah.
everything is, it means something. Nothing is accidental. There's actually no such thing as coincidence. This is just
No,
what was supposed to happen.
that's so interesting that you bring up that point of like to let you know that like something has happened for the historical account of that, because earlier in the novel when White's army of filibusters gets completely massacred by the Apaches, and then him and that other wounded soldier with him, they go into this town, and then the kid, which the protagonist, if this has a protagonist at all, like
Is yeah, is the
uh,
kid? Yeah,
uh like says something I don't have that specific quote written down, but you just made me like think of this, just talking about like if we didn't witness this atrocity, then like maybe nobody on earth would ever have known it happened.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
Do you exist if there's nothing? There's no history about you.
right,
Do you exist if you haven't been cataloged? Actually, is a good way to put it.
right.
From our good friend, the judge. The judge, which is one of my favorite parts of the book, that when he's like drawing like the animals and stuff, he finds some guy asks him about it, and he's like, "Don't put me in that book."
Yeah, Webster asked him about it.
Yeah, and the judge is like, "Well, if I don't put you in the book, you don't exist, and if you don't exist, I might as well fucking kill you, basically."
But that, and then recreating like pots or other artifacts and destroying the originals, because his whole thing is like things only exist as long as if I allow it. But
Oh, it's one of my favorite. I know we're skipping around a little bit.
Oh yeah.
We're gonna get back to a little bit more structured here, but I love the line when he's just like, if there's something that's not in this book that exists, I find it that offensive that I don't know about it.
Mm-hmm.
Things that exist without my knowledge, I find offensive personally.
Yeah.
It's like solipsism. It's like nothing exists outside of his immediate needs.
Mm-hmm.
It's really great.
No, I'm sure we're going to talk quite a bit about the old judge here.
Yes.
But yeah, like to your thing, this is my first McCarthy experience, and it was an experience getting through it. It's like nothing I've ever read before. And this is going to sound corny, but like the first time, like going like through this, where it was like trying to read. You remember when we were kids and that certain school where we had to read the Bible?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's that it's that kind of language, and
it's dense.
Anything, and
he says a lot with doing very kind of little. It's very dense. It's like a dense book. But before we get like started into the book proper, I know we're kind of jumping in there because it's so exciting. Like Cormac McCarthy is the kind of writer, he writes stories that you just want to like dive into.
Mm-hmm.
But this was kind of a labor of love for him. I mean, it took him about 15 years to finish the novel complete. He actually moved down to the border.
Yeah.
During the process of writing down to El Paso, during the process of writing it. And it's an interesting thing because he's not like a very descriptive writer about the environments that the people are in. But you feel it. Mm-hmm. Like it's imbued with the fact that he was there. And it's it's like almost like supernatural in a weird way.
Right.
Like he really takes like his experience of taking in the environment and is able to communicate that to you without doing very much,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he also learned how to speak Spanish
He learned how to speak Spanish. He did it. I mean, it's historical fiction. That's what it's considered. Like, the gang in the book, the Glanton gang, which is what we spend the most time with, that's a real gang. And apparently the judge is a real person.
Yeah, yeah. The judge, actually, I have it written down there, but one of the it was Samuel. Oh my God, I'm saying I got too many damn notes. I don't even know where I try to organize, and you can't be organized. Samuel Chamberlain. He wrote a book called My Confessions, Recollections of a Rogue. So it's a guy that was in the army after the Mexican War, found his way into the gang, and then he wrote out his whole like experience with the gang, and then uh, the rest of his life on there.
Yeah.
But the guy Samuel Chamberlain was from Boston, and his real account of Judge Holden in the Glanton gang described him as like a 6'6" guy, hairless, and all this stuff, and then
And a child predator.
a child predator.
That's in the historical.
That's in there, right? So
Yeah.
granted, we're laying on the memoirs of a guy that was there at the time, but describes this person. So I mean, McCormack clearly like drew from that, as one of the sources for the character of the judge. But also in his own account said that the judge knew more about Boston, for which Samuel Chamberlain was from,
And that he
than
spoke
did.
every language of every people they came across. That's all part of that memoir.
Yeah, like he described as like the most learned man in all of northern Mexico, or
Well, because
something.
he's like kind of a sociopathic, amoral adventurist. Like he does adventure tourism, essentially, which was a very popular thing at the time during, especially like the times of Manifest Destiny, etc. The
Yeah.
spreading westward, because this is kind of part and parcel with that part of this time in America.
Sure.
And there was guys that would get together like the Glanton gang, and they were kind of mercenaries a little bit, and they would go crossing borders, just going into the West, and just kind of loot, pillage, and rape. That's just kind of what they did.
Yeah. No, but going to that, but taking it back to McCarthy, though, he did like really invest, like you said, 15 years to get in this until the right out there. So like, prior to this, because you've read McCarthy, you're familiar who he was. I didn't know until I bought this damn book. Did you know anything else like about him going in here?
No, it was kind of weird. I didn't actually know very much about the man.
Right.
I had never really looked into it. It was one of those things. It's like I read The Road. I liked it so much, and I was like, "Oh, I'm going to read everything this guy's ever written," and then never did. Blood Meridian has been a book I've wanted to read for like a decade.
Okay.
And last year I was like, I'm going to read Blood Meridian. I need to read Blood Meridian.
Right. Well, it's funny, like, because it came out in April of 1985, so we're reading.
Oh wow.
We finished it on the 39th anniversary.
Well, hot dog.
Yeah. How about that? Rest in peace, McCarthy.
Yes, rest in peace to Cormac McCarthy. He passed away last year, unfortunately. June.
Somewhere last year.
He was 93, but he wrote up until he died. He did like a 2-part novel that came out, I think, last year. Mm-hmm. The Passenger, and then there's like an addendum that's like a shorter second part.
No, dude. After this experience, like that's on my. It's a little anecdotal, but Shaun knows. Like, long story short, I made a promise to do more reading for myself, and now like my reading list has shifted to everything McCarthy has ever done.
Yeah,
and I'm going to start with Sultry, and then go on to The Road, and then probably check out all the Pretty Horses trilogy or whatever.
I can't remember what's the name. Is the name of the trilogy is like the Western Quartet or something? I think No Country for Old Men's part of it.
We'll know. I'll know soon enough. But yeah, man. Like interesting guy. Born in Rhode Island, and then grew up in the South in Tennessee.
Yeah, and just like a soft-spoken gentleman, like hyper intelligent. Interested in a million different things. He's been a college professor pretty much his whole adult life. That's what he does when he's not writing novels. He works at the Santa Fe University. That's where he pretty much. I know he retired, but I think he still contributed to the school though. I think he still did a bunch of stuff with the school.
He lived as a recluse for a long while, and
hell yeah, he did.
Yeah, and notoriously didn't take any interviews. And what's funny is because I went on
until Oprah.
In preparation for this talk, I was looking for McCormack interviews, right? And I found one where he was with a few other like academics, but on because he apparently got really, really into the subconscious.
Mm-hmm.
But then he goes on Oprah, and I'm just thinking about like, why would he call on Oprah? And the only thing I could think of is this guy, because I read this interview is from his ex-wife, and she was talking about how they're cooking and eating beans and like it just like really destitute times, and he got offered $2,000 to go speak about one of his books at some university, and he said, and this quote, he said, everything I have to say, I've already said it in my books. And
Yeah,
then
he was one of those guys for a long. He's like the guys that don't do audio commentaries. He's like, nope, the movie speaks for itself.
Yeah, like what I'm like, God, what a king, you know. Like,
well, even the interviews I saw of him, he didn't talk about his books.
The only thing I can think about is like, well, then not just like talking about the book, like, I said what I wanted to say in the book. It's just like everything I have to say is within my books.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever interview you want to have for me, you can get my answer. If what I think about this subject or this or that, it's all through. It's through my
what I meant to say was like even when he started giving a few interviews, they were never about his books.
Right.
They're just about like him and his interests. And
but even with the Oprah interview, right? And the only thing I can think of is like, well, she's not going to dive in deep into like, inner workings, and she's not going to ask him to explain anything. He can do that. And then in that interview, he doesn't talk about his books. He talks about the subconscious.
Yeah.
So it's really, really interesting cat, but it's also kind of like, is it just like the cliche of like a writer, like all the fruits of your labor don't come to fruition until like you can't even like enjoy it.
Until you're too old to enjoy it, really. Yeah.
You won't enjoy the shade of the seeds you plant today, like all this stuff, right? Like that's what happened. This book that we're talking about tonight, published 39 years ago this month.
Well, it was interesting, listening to his thoughts about like, the nature of subconscious. See, like he made a comment about the subconscious being kind of like older than language.
Mm-hmm.
Like it predates language and he's kind of implying that we have some sort of like genetic memories of things. Everything is kind of already inside of us, and it's waiting for our consciousness to do something to kick loose that information.
Yeah.
Like he was talking about the guy that, not the double helix, somebody was trying to figure out the shape of a molecule, and he just was racking his brain. It was like his life's work. He was doing it all the time. And he falls asleep one night thinking about it next to a fire. And he's like watching the fire as he falls asleep, and he wakes up and he had the answer after years of screwing around and stuff like that. And that's kind of, he's like, why does that happen? He's just like kind of a naturally curious person, which is the sign of like a good artist or a writer, somebody that's inquisitive in that way.
Yeah.
And doesn't just throw it away because like, well, that sounds crazy. That's silly.
Mm-hmm. No.
He's like, no, like, why is that? Why does that happen? Why does it ever happen? What's the explanation,
Yeah, prove it wrong.
And he's kind of open to it being in some ways supernatural, but maybe it's just something we don't understand. It's not actually supernatural. It's just something we don't know about the human mind, the human condition. What do we pass down, like, when we have kids and stuff? What do we pass down at a genetic level? Is there information in there that's like a little bit more profound than just like the color of your eyes or something,
Right. But in the case of Blood Meridian, the answer is trauma. We pass down trauma.
Yeah, we pass down trauma.
Generational trauma. But no, dude, just really. And he gave another anecdote too of someone trying to figure out a theory, and then and I'm botching this because I don't remember the name of that person, but I remember the name of the person he had a conversation with in his dream, which was Steve Nash, and I only know Steve Nash because of A Beautiful Mind. And then wrote it out, and then ended up citing Steve Nash, who has already been dead, as the co-author of this, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, it's an appreciation and respect for something that you don't know.
Because you don't know what's also in your subconscious collective, right? We're taking in information constantly all the time. Like we actually don't know what we know.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I find that a lot through the process of doing, podcasts and streams and stuff. I know way more about things than I think that I do. I just don't have like ready access to that information unless it's prompted.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's a hard skill set, man. Or just a tough, it's a disciplined disposition to have to be able to like roll through your mind like a Rolodex and like pull for that like on the ready. So that's.
Yeah, no, I'm very impressed when people do that. Like when you go watch like some of these really like high level intellectuals talk and stuff, like the amount of information they just have access to about every subject.
Yeah, or like weaponized autism, like Ben
Yeah.
Shapiro, for example, right? They just
Yeah.
here's
Well,
some
it
bad.
kind of reminded me of I watched the debate. I know it's a little bit of a tangent, but I watched the debate with Jordan Peterson and Destiny, and there is no clearer example of like a serious person and a fraud,
Mm-hmm.
because Destiny studied for 6 months before that podcast. Do you think Jordan Peterson even thought about it before the day?
Mm-hmm.
No. But Jordan Peterson could keep up with it, had answers for everything he wanted to ask, had
Right.
pushback for everything. He had immediate access to all that knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just impressive. It's just an impressive thing that not everybody can do. I surely am not somebody like that. Like I rely on prompts a lot. I think it's something I've done since I was a kid, you know?
Right.
It's like why do I prefer multiple choice tests?
Yeah.
Because
Well,
if I see the answer, I'm going to know this. It's going to do something in my brain where it's going to like put the pieces together.
right. You'll figure out process elimination, right? But when you have to eliminate the abyss that is your mind and try to pinpoint
Exactly.
the
Yeah.
right thing, it becomes
Yeah. If you can boil it down to 4 options instead of 50,000.
yeah, man.
You know?
Yeah, or at least maybe 10. I don't know, right? 10 relative ones to pull back to help out in your toolkit there. I did have something I pulled up that I thought was really interesting from a New York Times magazine interview that he did, because apparently there was a at the Whitliff collection at Texas State University. They acquired McCarthy's Larry archive in like '07, and they basically this guy what he did was um, went through every single book, every single novel that McCarthy mentioned, referenced, or annotated in his like personal journals about this. Why did this guy spend so much time and catalog 150 different books that McCarthy was very familiar with? Because of one quote that he told this New York Times magazine. He said that the ugly truth is that books are made out of books.
Yeah.
So they pull out that, and that sent this guy down a spiral to go catalog and like what he's saying here. And then it goes on. The commentary for this New York Times magazine article said, but he has been famously unwilling to discuss how his own writing draws on the works of other writers. Yet his novels and plays masterfully allude to an extensive range of literary works, demonstrating that McCarthy is well aware of literary tradition, respectful of the canon, and deliberately situating himself in knowing relationship to precursors.
Yeah, because I think he looks at himself and his work in a historical context, just like the books, like the characters do in his books,
Yeah.
right? Like,
yeah.
you know,
But it just know that, but it's all pulling from something. So, like the epilogue that you talked about at the top of the start of the show, right? And it's kind of like
that's his personal philosophy. Is
Right.
that something cannot come.
Right. And just like Jordan Peterson be able to do, so if you're based in certain ideology and certain belief systems and just certain facts about the world, like you can be able to pull from them, right? And that's what he's doing in like all of his literary works, right? And it's just it gets more impressive the more you think about it, I guess is what I would say.
Yeah.
He writes good. He writes good.
He write good book. He write good book. He write good book.
He's going places.
Yeah,
so.
he's gonna be a big guy. He's gonna be a big writer someday. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man. Yeah.
No, and it's true though. Like it's really imbued in his work, that sentiment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Even in The Road, it's there too.
Yeah, but I mean, would you think that what other books do you think he was citing from?
I don't.
Inspiration for this.
I know he's not the only person that has a skewed like grammar. I know he's not the only, and he does that on purpose, and he's made statements about it. He says it gets in the way.
Not just on the grammar, but just like themes, characters. Like
no, I know that. I was just starting with that as a starting point. Yeah. What he was pulling from, I don't. It's kind of hard to say.
Mm-hmm.
His stories are kind of unique unto themselves in the way that he approaches them. So maybe this is just my lack of knowledge, my naivete about literature, probably. But I think he pulls a lot from the classics because he's pulling kind of grand archetypal themes about life and existence and the topics that he deals with, things like violence,
Yeah.
the casual nature of violence, the chaotic nature of life. I think that's kind of what he pulls from. So you could say he's pulling things from things like Paradise Lost.
There we go.
Like a John Milton book, things like that, where it's kind of, it's about the philosophy more than the story itself. It's about what the metaphors are, what the allegory is.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's even true. Even you could read Blood Meridian in any of his books in a literal way, but then you're only getting like 40% of what he's trying to communicate to you, you know?
Right.
Like people that get turned off by Blood Meridian because like, oh, it's just like random violence all over the place.
Right.
Because I saw that a lot. I saw a lot of people with that making comments like that.
No, it's really not. And I'm not a learned person. I'm not a philosophy major or whatever. I never fucking read Paradise Lost, but I did read in like one of those Yale literary pieces that he cited. You know, like he ripped off Moby Dick, and then like
I know what you mean.
It's a term of endearment, right? Paraphrasing
Yeah.
it. Ripped off Moby Dick, and then Paradise Lost, particularly in the scene where the judge is making gunpowder, right? And then,
Yes.
That really gruesome scene where the Apaches are coming up on them and they're trying to make some gunpowder to defend them off, and then he has everyone pissed while
dude.
Like,
when you read scenes like that, you're like, what do you mean this is an unfilmable movie? Like every single scene is like the most cinematic thing. I could see it in my mind.
Yeah, but like, who's going to do it, right? Who's going to get a bunch of get 8 dead babies onto a bush, all strung up through their fucking
Well, you
jaw?
gotta adapt, Paul. You know,
But but I'm just saying. I mean, it's now.
well, it would lose its point.
Here,
It would lose the point if you lose a lot of the violence. Yeah, like it just wouldn't hit.
It exactly. It wouldn't hit. And well, that too, and then like the pedophile stuff in here, and like the. That'd be a hard. Well, then I don't know. It's insert year here too. You know, I'm sure.
Well, because I think that the book does it in a way where you could totally do it as a movie because it's not they don't draw attention to it until they do.
Right.
Like it's a thing that like it's a kind of a light switch moment in the book. You're like, oh, that's what's been going on because he doesn't dwell on it.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't dwell on any of it. It's honestly like barely remarked upon.
Right. But that's just kind of like thinking because I came across books Billabong books, and like that's his comment on that, and then reading it, and then granted we're going outside the source material, like like a little bit into here with a personal interview like Brandis, but it helps, like once you put it in your head you can't stop like thinking about like other like sources, and then the whole like theme of the judge cataloging everything, right? And like whatnot. If it's not cataloged, then it doesn't exist. What does that even mean, right? There's so much to chew on this. Like
I know
with this, man. It's just it's one of these things that, like, I'm probably going to read it again like next year.
I had the same thought today. Like when I was preparing and getting all, I was like, man, I just kind of want to read this again. Like I just want to dive back in because it's truly not. It's I think there is a distinction between like a book, a novel, and literature. Like this is literature. This is something that is so rich that you can just constantly go back to it.
Yeah.
And pull other, and there's, this is our first time ever, our first experience with the book. So there's probably a lot of stuff we're going to miss, we're going to misunderstand, but like you have that drive to go back in the same way that you have with something like Paradise Lost, with like reading Shakespeare, things like that, like, or reading philosophers, and you want to go back and re-experience it and see and re-engage with it, especially at different times of your life, because it'll mean different things. Blood Meridian is a book I think is best probably experienced when you're like our age. When you're, because now we're almost at the age that the kid is by the end of the book.
Right.
So like,
if I think read this in high school, I would have fucking hated it. I know that.
Do you think so? You sure you wouldn't have just got into it because of the
violence,
like the visceral nature of it, and thinking the judge is awesome because you misunderstand? It's like watching Fight Club when you're a kid. Like, Tyler Durden fucking rules, dude. You know what I mean?
Yeah, maybe. Who knows?
But like, dude, the judge. You hear what the judge said about war? Fuck yeah, dude.
This is by far the heaviest book we've ever done on Zoobox, man.
Oh, 100%.
And then the most violent, because I was thinking, like, what book have we talked about that was even remotely close to being this violent? And I started thinking about like American Psycho would probably be the closest thing in terms of like the gratuitous violence, right? Or like the use violence, right? That would probably be American Psycho. That we
because it's constantly juxtaposing mundanity with like extreme moments,
No, exactly, yeah. And so, but here, man, like, are we done with like McCarthy's like background? Because I mean,
Yeah.
not that we gave a whole like robust thing, but just like enough interesting things
No,
about.
but I think it's a good thing to set the stage for the story because I think it does help if you understand the author a little bit before you engage with something like Blood Meridian, like kind of understand where he's coming from, because then you're going to be able to some degree understand that he's talking about deeper things.
Yeah,
You're just
yeah,
going to know that about the book. So I think it's well worth like kind of like
yeah,
diving into him as a person a little bit.
yeah. But knowing that about him, right, and then like and his curiosity with subconscious and stuff, it just made me go back to like every chapter you go to, right? Like what happens at the beginning of every chapter, right? You get the
He
number, and
he
then
breaks it down.
he just breaks it down there, but he breaks it down in like short, like little notes, just like in the streets, brass teeth, Los Cerritos, a veteran of the late war, right? And like it just goes on almost as like a comedian writes down notes to make sure he keeps his bit on track, right? Or someone
Sure. Yeah.
just something. This like is he messing with your subconscious now, like knowing this as you're going through like guidance? Are these shaman notes at the top of every chapter before you freaking drop that ayahuasca in the desert and you're about to go experience this and now you know loosely like where you're headed to, right? You know what I mean? Like why, because he does that for every single chapter, right? And then like
I wonder if
obviously everything
it
you've
was
written down was like intent, but I'm just thinking there, is that like a play on like what he's doing to your experience like going through this novel,
kind of
like
he's following the ideology of the book and his beliefs, which is like nothing can happen that's not preceded by something.
right.
So it's almost like he's giving you this information so that you can pay attention or so you can keep track. That's what
Yeah.
I was going to say. Do you think it was a practical consideration or is it a choice?
Right. Was it editor's note? Like, hey, give him, like an outline there, or like, was it him just like giving you that, like playing with this concept of like, subconscious and just giving you something to like guide you like through this journey, man?
Well,
Like,
because it's like because you can get lost. Like we had kind
yeah,
of said, the way he writes, especially if it's your first time ever dealing with Cormac McCarthy, it's easy to get lost.
mm-hmm,
And it's actually helpful to have that as markers. So you'd
mm-hmm,
be like, okay, well, I know I was at that part. Now I'm here. Okay, cool. Now I got it straight. Now I know where
yeah.
I am.
How many times did you go to the top of the chapter to go back and like, oh, okay,
When, especially in the early goings, a lot
yeah,
in the
right,
early goings, and then you kind of once you get into the rhythm of his writing and you start being able to kind of imagine the grammar, like kind of figure it out for yourself. Which the grammar thing, I know it's something that's remarked upon a lot, but it's not pointless. And I know Cormac McCarthy kind of gives his grumpy old man answer,
right,
like it gets in the way. Like I don't. Why do you need that? It just gets in the way of the words.
yeah,
But what it does though, it opens everything he writes up to interpretation
yes.
because you don't know where the emphasis is.
And then knowing that his obsession with like the self-conscious, I'm going to give you these bulleted outline of what's happened in this chapter, and then I'm going to write it in a way that's not structured and traditional like grammar, and then you're just going to have to figure it out.
Well, because
Right?
it's kind of like a stream of thought.
Yeah, yeah, stream of consciousness.
Yeah.
Well, no, is that right? Yeah,
Well, it's just a stream of consciousness because it's almost like somebody rushing through, like writing fast. Like this is what you would do if you were just writing it for yourself before you went back and edited and you
yeah.
fixed it up.
Mhm.
You're like, I just got to get these out. I got to get these ideas out before I forget. I do
Yeah,
that. I do that occasionally.
absolutely. But dude, yeah, man, God, but just like getting into it, man. The experience of it, like you want to start with the kid, like
Yeah,
what the fuck
let's
is like the kid, man? Good guy, bad guy? What is it? Are there any good guys like in this novel, right?
I mean,
And, like,
clearly the
my whole
close.
thing with this thing is that everything in here, because I did a cursory look of movies, Western movies from the 70s and 80s, right? That
Mhm.
came out, and and a lot of it, you got your happy-go-lucky, John Wayne stuff, True Grit, like yeah, some classics, obviously, like in there, right? But all hokey dokey, all like good side and bad side, right and wrong. Here, it's completely
Ambiguous. Yeah.
ambiguous, and not even ambiguous, but what's stopping you from saying just completely horror?
Well,
It,
because people. I mean, this is the thing with the kid, the character. People, you'll find wildly different opinions about that character.
Mm-hmm.
Like some people take a very sympathetic view. Some people think he's just as bad as the rest of the Glanton gang. And some people think he's somewhere in the middle. My read on him was that he was a kid. He's a victim of circumstance. He's a product of his environment. He never had a chance. He never had a chance. Literally, his mother dies in childbirth.
Paragraph of like his life, right?
And says he was born into violence, and he's ready. He's a violent animal.
Already has a taste for mindless violence, right?
Yeah.
But the fact that his father is a schoolmaster, right, a teacher, and he doesn't know how to read. He's illiterate, right? And but why runs away from home like he's 14? So
everything starts for this kid with resentment. His father hates him because his mother died.
Yeah.
And he's just there existing and not being paid much attention to. I think, and then he runs away at 14.
Yeah.
And then which is kind of a wild thing to think about.
It's an understatement. The motherfucker is illiterate. Can't read. His dad's a teacher. Like that's not okay. As someone who's an educator himself,
no, it's not okay. But which especially for me, because it's like one of my great anxieties about being a homeschooler was like, what if I can't teach my kid to read? Mm-hmm. Like the thought crossed my mind. I was like, oh fuck. But anyways, yeah. So that does, but that's what you're saying right now is an example, a great example of that. There is tons of subtext packed in here that is never discussed. What we're talking about right now is not discussed like this. It is mentioned in passing.
Yeah.
And you have to put those pieces together yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. You will not have your hand held through this other than the little words he puts at the top of like every chapter. Right.
Yeah.
But like you said, that's a great way of putting it, Sean. It's just like, what do you think of the kid? He's a kid, right? He's a kid in this most like crazy, corrupt, and insert adjective here, like just terrible place, man. Like this world is so fucking brutal. And and back on like the books on books thing, it's like Lord of the Flies, but they all grown up and moved out west, right? Like that's what's happening here, right? It's the same theme. It's not a book upon this, right? I'll get off that bit, but just strolling like through this universe in here, like can you imagine? I have a 14-year-old, right?
Yeah.
I can't, like, it just boggles my mind, man. Just boggles my mind.
Well, how can you not have some empathy for him?
Right.
Because immediately I felt bad for him, like immediately.
Yeah.
And I was just like, this is awful. And I understand it doesn't justify what he does as a person. It doesn't justify it, but it gives it context.
Yeah.
And that context is very important.
Yes, it is.
We can't do things for people if we don't understand them. And I think that's, this is kind of, at least that's where I come from. And I just have a lot of sympathy for young men because of I'm a father of 2 sons and, spend a lot of time watching weirdos on the internet that are young and misguided,
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, you do. Check out Nightcap.
Yeah.
But yeah, man. So like in terms of like, is he a good guy or bad guy, right? So he's just a product of environment, this neglected kid, and he goes through it. And then,
I think he wants to be a good guy. I think he's in the Glanton gang. He finds people that he is finally like, well, this is a little much.
Right. Yeah. Like who does he latch onto besides Toadvine, who he comically, I want to talk about Toadvine later, but gets in a brawl with, right? Because none of the, people are all good, right? Relatively, right? So Toadvine is good guy, Toadvine, relatively speaking, like in the universe to him. But the one he really connects with is the ex-priest Tobin, right? And he goes on there for it's like stand-in father figure, in addition to the judge, which is creepy, like another level that we'll get to when we start talking about the judge, but. Just kind of going through. So we don't see him do anything except for the beginning where he's trotting out west, right? And just trying to survive and scrap. He does some horrific things, like set a fucking hotel on fire with Toadvine, right? And then stab a Mexican.
And he does it just because, it's he's like a sociopath.
Right.
He's like,
mindless.
Yeah. The guy's like, hey, you want to set this on fire? And he's like, yeah. And they do.
Yeah. Wait, what's it? Yeah. Wants to set on fire because he wants to loot out a guy that owes him money, and then it just goes like comically haywire. Well, they set a hotel on fire, so like, yeah, so they wanted to get him out of the room, and then they did more than that. They did more than that, right?
It's kid logic.
But he's just it's just completely crazy. Which ironically, the only stability he gets in his young life is when he joins the Glanton gang, right? Because because like when he escapes home, he gets on a riverboat, he starts fighting all these foreigners every night and scrapping for food, gets hurt, gets stabbed, makes his way into Texas eventually, gets in a fight with Toadvine, and then finds the filibusters, Captain White's army, right? They're trying to the war is over, but they're going to try to like see some land, and then and like one of those things. I don't want to talk about like the racism like thing or whatever. It's just the time, and that's just
that's just the time period.
Like, where, like people are still even to this day tribalistic, like whatever.
And the Glanton gang, the Glanton gang, they're kind of woke.
The Glanton gang is actually a very diverse group, and one of my favorite parts, scenes, and it's because I just think it'd be so. I could just see the movie scene, so awesome. I'm a sucker for fucking like turn your head off, fucking badass action scenes. It was with the character Black Jackson. We can get to that one later, but on the kid, like he doesn't do anything that's. What does he do? What does he do that's so atrocious or like bad?
Well, he's very passive. You don't even know if he's like actually engaging in the carnage. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No, because it appears, at least from my read, because I the first 80 to 100 pages 3 different times, but I got through the book like twice. This is what we're talking like what is he doing that is terrible? Except for the end when he's the man. And then at the beginning, when he's like strumbling his way out west, right? Throughout that, right? So what to me, and this is another one of these rich things with McCarthy, it's not given to you, it's not explicitly stated, but the most stable part of this kid's life is when he joined the Glanton gang.
Mm-hmm. It's the only family he's ever really known.
Yeah.
It's the only time people have ever given him any consideration are these men.
Consideration, respect,
yeah,
worth, like.
He has purpose. He has purpose. He has a place in the world. I mean, I think that the thing with him that is one of these another McCarthyisms, if I dare call it that, is that it is revealed by the judge towards the end of the book that he was not an active participant in a lot of what they were doing because he calls him out on it. And he says, if we're not all in, then nobody's in. And you endangered all of us by not committing 100%. You didn't get into the hedonism. You didn't get into the wanton, like kind of rape and murder and scalping and all that stuff. You weren't fully committed.
Right.
And he kind of exposes that. And I think the judge is, from his perception, is telling the truth about that, which leads me to believe that he was more of a passive member of the gang. Okay.
So you're in the camp where you believe the judge was real.
Is there a theory that he's in his mind? I didn't even know that. I missed that one.
Not in his mind, but in everybody's mind. Everybody knows
because he's the devil.
Everyone knows the judge one form. I don't really buy he's the devil.
No, but obviously clearly McCarthy's using a ton of iconography, to imply that he's the personification of evil. Yeah. For this time period, he is the most extreme. He is the most satanic. Yeah. Because he's selfish. Mm-hmm. Like we were talking about earlier, he's solipsistic.
Everything beautiful, everything he wants to defy literal nature. He wants to be supreme of everything.
I mean, he wants to establish himself as God, and that's kind of like this, or at least as an adversary to God, while at the same time acting like he's one of the flock. Yeah,
but there's a couple things about the kid I want to finish up. That's really like. It's just kind of like going through this because we both get. I think we both our takeaways from this is you definitely get empathy from him, right? Upbringing, going this, and then and then we're getting this whole world of the Glanton gang, through his perspective. I guess. Right.
Well, it is and it isn't. That's what's so difficult about the book because you're sometimes you feel like you're seeing it from the kid's perspective, sometimes it's third person.
Yeah, it's you're on that ayahuasca trip, man.
Yeah,
but but what's really interesting to me is the tail end of this one, like when the narration shifts from the kid to the man, right? Oh, right before it shifts from the kid to the man, when Tobin and the kid escape the judge after the Yuma tribe massacred the Glanton gang. Okay.
Yeah.
And it goes on there, and then he makes his way out to Los Angeles, and then he sees Toadvine and Davy. Oh God, what was his name? Was it Davy Jones or Davy Brown? Davy Brown.
Yeah, it's Brown. Yeah, that's right.
Davy Brown, right? They get hanged in Los Angeles for crimes that they're definitely hang worthy, right? But who knows crimes they were hung over? But the point is, they're getting hung, right? And then he buys Davy Brown's necklace of ears, which we assume that he got from another character, Bathcat, which came from Australia. Which, how fucking crazy is that, right? Some guy from Australia that made a living killing Aborigines, finds his way come to America to go do the same shit. Like
more native people to kill.
Yeah, it's just like another. Well, that's also too. Like, I know we'll save it for the judge when we get to the judge, but just like, where do you go if this is your appetite? If this is what you think, what the order of life should be, right? Where else do you go but the Wild West in this time period, right? Like that's where you go if that's your disposition, to conquer, right? There's the conquered and conqueror. So, like, what are you going to do? But he buys that that necklace of ears from somebody that took it off, Davy Brown, for $2. And $2 in 1849 has the buying power of, you want to guess?
Well, like $100?
Yeah, damn near close. $80.60.
Well, it's a necklace of real ears, Paul. I mean, it's come on. You think you're just going to go into any store and find that? It's priceless.
You can just pick that up anywhere. But yeah, like.
Well, it's almost like he uses it like stolen valor.
Here's the thing, why I brought that up is just like that even as grotesque and terrifying and disgusting a necklace of human ears got from mostly peaceful people, because the Glanton gang killed a lot of innocent people just to scalp them and say, hey, here's an Apache scalp for you, right? Like that, even something so horrific, right? Like a necklace of ears that he's going to pay $80 for, at the time, to get, because it reminds him of, like you said, the only family, the only stability that he's ever had in his life. And if you sit on that, holy fuck, dude.
Yeah, it's really deep.
Worth $80 of your time out in the Wild West. It's not like he's on a pension plan. It's not like he's got a fucking union job, work on the railroad out there, or the Captain White's army is giving him any type of comp. Like, no, dude, that's what that means to you. That's the thing that I told you, like, it's not really on those, but like you dropped some capital on getting that. And why did he buy those ears, Sean? Is it because of that? It's because it was associated with.
I think it's sentimentality. It's like, I think what you're saying is 100% correct.
He's just and that's what's in this book, is littered with the shit, with beautiful things destroyed.
But he's also, just an interesting part about
something that was destroyed, but then provided with a new lens of sentimental value. Right?
Sentimental value, but then he wears it, and then there's a few anecdotes after the fact that when he has the necklace where he's kind of confronted with it. About it, right? It's almost like stolen valor in a weird way.
Yeah.
But then he kind of recontextualizes it for him. He's like, oh, that was awful.
Yeah.
Like, oh, because he starts getting insecure about it.
He didn't take it for stolen valor. He took
I know that. Yeah.
For sentimental value. But no, I'm agreeing with him. Just elaborating, and not just taking it, because it had a funny scene. It's like, you got those, N-word ears all around. He's like, no, these are Apache. I'm like, then why are they black?
Yeah,
it's just what they turn into. What they've done, they just turn black till they can't turn black no more. Yeah, weird. And people are, did you do it? And then all this stuff, oh my god, that realization, right?
Well, because after I think it's shortly after that is when he comes across a massacred village, and he thinks he sees a woman that's alive, and she's huddled up under a rock or something. And he kind of slowly approaches her. He just kind of witnesses all the carnage, And because this is when he realizes kind of the horrors of his life.
Mm-hmm.
I think is when he's confronted about the necklace. Again, it's another McCarthy thing. He doesn't tell you that.
No.
So, you got to kind of like read into it a little bit, because right after that, he has like his first empathetic moment to another person.
Yeah.
And then it ends up, the tragedy of it is that it's too late. That woman in particular is dead.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also kind of, it's almost like, it's a weird thing where it's almost like a broader message about being like, you can't take this shit back. I know you didn't know any better, but you still did it. And you're going to have to live with that.
Mm-hmm.
And there's probably going to be a time where you also succumb to violence.
Right.
Like it's just a reality of the life of a person like that.
Right. Yeah, no, man.
I mean, because he has a few moments like that after, like, when it transitions to calling him the man, was when he kills that 15-year-old kid.
And that's where I wanted to get to, right?
Because he's like looking at himself, and it's almost like, like there were so many different takes on that particular part. And I was like, is this like kindness from his perspective? Is he like doing this, like, because he's like this, he would have been dead and he was going to die anyways.
He wouldn't have made it anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just cap that, right? Like, what do you do with
like
that?
some people thought it as like a selfish act in terms of like him doing something so he could like kind of move on with his life. Like it was a way to put the past in the past. I didn't take that myself. I thought like in his fucked up life and worldview, and he thinks about his own life and he's reflecting on it partially because of that necklace and just because of time, years go by. He's not part of the gang anymore. He's away from the judge. He's living his own life, probably reflects on his experience, his life. He clearly wants to be a better person. He's illiterate. He never learns how to read, but it's remarked that he, carries around a Bible. Is that for show? Or is that because he actually wants to? That's unclear. That's something you got to decide for yourself. But I thought, in my mind, just because I saw that, like, he realizes in some respects, like, kind of what he's done, and maybe he feels like in his own fucked up way, he's sparing somebody from that life.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's right. It's obviously completely psychotic, but like from his perspective.
But, trust me, you're not going to miss anything.
Yeah. Like it's all downhill from here.
Knows? And in this world, maybe that kid will stumble into like another fix. Because it wasn't any part of a foreshadowing from the story that the judge talked about, like with the traveler and the harness maker.
Yes. Right?
And like and they allude to that. Like I'm not sure, because that was one of the times where I had to go back and read. I'm like, what the fuck did I just read? Because that just, like I said, you can't sleep on this book, because if you don't, then you're just like, where the fuck am I? Like I said, ayahuasca trip, you need the shaman, you got to stay focused. Like when because the first time I went through and going over the judge talking about the story, the harness maker, I don't know, my mind went somewhere else. I'm just sitting there, I'm like, wait, what the fuck are we talking about? Like some kids like throwing around bones over what the fuck? Okay. God, I hate this book. This whole time, man, I went from like, I hate this, dude, to like, wow, this is great, to hating it again, to now like, okay, I love it, and I love to hate it. But like it was insane. But you think about it, it's not the book that I hate; it's just construct, because like everything in there is like it's real shit. It's real shit. That is the world, right? And then in this world, right, there are no objectively black and white, like good guys, bad guys.
Well, even most of
everybody is bad. He depicts everybody the same way in this Wild West, dude, and that's what's.
Well, there's only one group of people that he meets that are nice to him, that give him water, and it's those cattle ranchers.
Mm-hmm.
Give him water. They give him a knife. But like he's getting abused basically from the time he starts running away. I mean, there's actually a great scene. One of the and it kind of lays the whole theme of the book out for you, is when he spends the night with the hermit. Very early on in the book, he spends the night with the hermit, and it kind of there's a section, I'll read it, that kind of illustrates the theme of the book. Kind of tells you kind of up front, like about part of what this is about.
Mm-hmm.
It says, "Lost you way in the dark," said the old man. He stirred the fire, standing slender tusks of bone up out of the ashes. The kid didn't answer. The old man swung his head back and forth. The way of the transgressor is hard. God made this world, but he didn't make it suit everybody, did he? I don't believe he much had me in mind. Aye, said the old man. But where does a man come by this notion? What worlds he seen that he liked better? I can think of better places and better ways. Can you make it be? No. No. It's a mystery. A man's at odds to know his mind because his mind is aught he has to know with it with. He can know his heart, but he don't want to. Rightly so. Best not to look in there. It ain't the heart of a creature that is bound in the way that God has set for it. You can find meanness in the least of creatures, but when God made man, the devil was at his elbow. A creature that can do anything, make a machine and make a machine to make the machine, and the evil that can run itself 1,000 years. No need to tend to it. You believe that? I don't know. Believe that.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of the book, right?
Right. Well, that too, and then what else happens in the hut, right? He's talking about, that heart that he acquired because this hermit used to be a slave driver, right?
Yeah.
And then they got the creepy thing last time he sees the hermit before he dispatches that he wakes up and he's hovering over him and then goes away. And then, disappears. There's another foreshadowing of
it's foreshadowing just like the constant danger this kid's in. And also I kind of like that's a foreshadowing almost for the kid because the slave trader, lived that life and now he's a fucking hermit that lives in a hill on the side of a hill, like lives in a cave in the side of a hill.
Right. So going back to the kid shooting that other kid coming up on him, it's like, I know what your future is. I have two different outcomes, what I am right now and then that fucking hermit, bye.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Absolutely crazy. But yeah, man, that's but you bring that like you don't know your mind. Just basically, you don't know your mind. You kind of understand your heart, but you don't want to. No one fully knows their mind. We all know the inner workings of the world, so it's best not to look in there. And so, what's he saying? It's best not to look too deep, right?
Kind of because he's kind of implying that we're too stupid to really understand our nature. Mm-hmm. So it's best not to worry about those kinds of things because this is just the nature of man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
we're mercenary. We're opportunists. We're
or another way, someone could say, focus, worry about what you can control, not what you can't, right?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, for sure.
Dude, did you a lot of this too, just a lot of dark humor? Was there any humorous or
Oh, dude, I laughed all the time reading this book. I mean, there's so many. I mean, for how evil the judge is, he is a very entertaining. I can't even imagine being an actor and thinking you get a shot at the judge. Who wouldn't want to do that? Holy shit. I can't even think. I'm thinking in my mind, who would be a good match for the judge. Nothing really comes to mind, but
I have one in mind. Vincent, oh God, the guy from Full Metal Jacket.
Vincent D'Onofrio?
D'Onofrio, yeah.
I think Vince, yeah, actually, you're right. Yeah, because of the Kingpin.
Yeah.
Because he's, shaved head and stuff, yeah.
You either get Danny DeVito on stilts or you get
Danny DeVito as the judge.
Well, I mean, for the part 2 of this, for this pod, will be Danny DeVito. The judge is just just the Penguin. It's based off the Penguin. Books upon books. McCarthy.
Yeah, exactly.
Here's how he clearly ripped off Batman with the Penguin. Penguin is Judge Hold'em. You heard it first here on Zoobox. But yeah, dude, they had the one thing I had where I meant to text you too, man, I'm reading this Blood Meridian book, man. You think McCarthy was an anti-natalist?
I was kind of, this will be a little tangent before we start talking about the judge and stuff, and further on the book. But do you think this is a cynical book, or do you think that it is just a practical, trying to be truthful? And it is just what it is.
I think this is reality. This is what's so great about it, Shaun, right? Because it's you're telling a historical events that happen, right, through the fictional lens of the kid, right, and the other things, right. But I do think he is for now because it's it's a human experience thing. This is going on what happened in this time period, and here's how people act, and what do you think about that, right? Without the Mickey Mouse lens of a good guy and a bad guy. There's no John Wayne. There's no Clint Eastwood here.
There's no judgment.
Exactly. Even though we have a judge throughout most of the novel, right? There's none of that, right? So I wouldn't say it's about now and I would say, because one quote came to mind, and it's not from this author, is not Cormac McCarthy, and his books are not anything that he's done. But you know, I did a review on Pierce Brown's Red Rising.
Yeah.
So like a little while ago, and like there's one line on there where he goes like, you know, death begets death, right? That's one of the themes of that too, and just like thinking, so is he? And I picked up a lot of that here in like Blood Meridian, like everything that you do, like there is a reaction. Anytime you
Yes.
try to play God, every time you try to do like what the hermit is saying, you know, like yeah, you don't know, try to control it, like you don't understand, and there's always a negative like consequence to this. And then
Well,
because
to be like a materially driven hedonist, like, and have no considerations of ethics or morality or the state of your soul or whatever.
well, that's the line right there. Live by the sword, die by the sword. Like, and what was the line? It's like, well, why would you have it any other way, or something,
Yeah.
or something like that, right? But yeah, no, but those you can test with that, you're going to die with that, and we get glimpses of that through, like when he's with, you know, Captain White's army, and then you know they're so ill equipped for the mission at hand, and even the environment. They're not even prepared for the environment of the desert, right?
Yeah.
So now you're trying to contest something that's against your own government, and then you're trying to take, you know, you're being filibusters. You're trying to prolong. You don't like the outcome of the Mexican-American War. You want to go seek your riches, and that's so you find your own country, your own country's government, and then the territory, and then you're embarking onto an environment that no one in your army is equipped for. You get destroyed. McCarthy even symbolizes that with, like, you know, animals, the foxes and stuff like that, following them around in broad daylight as a
Mhm.
symbol of, like, even the animals know, like the you know,
That
the
they're
native
vulnerable.
animals know that like we're going to be eating these guys. These aren't
Yeah.
they're not supposed to be here. They're not going to make it, right? So you don't make it into this world, which makes really curious about, like, the judge's character, where that's sole purpose of why he's there is to
Yeah.
conquer that, right?
Yes.
And so I guess so, like, you know, the theme of that is like you're going like, you know, life is brutal. There's always going to be opposing forces, and what you contend with, you're going to be greeted back with that, right?
Yes.
And
But
then how
also
they
being
play
a
it,
good, also about doing the right thing and being a good person does not guarantee you reprieve from the violence of the environment.
right,
Like,
right.
it's like,
So
you know,
what do you gather? What do you gather out of that too, though? So like you have to be brutal, but
to
you have to
survive.
be fair, right? You have to be brutal to survive, but it doesn't mean you can still have humanity, and you can still like be a good person, but you got to be on your toes, right? And then if you want to drive that, if that is like a takeaway, if you want to be a good person, you can do that, but you also have to be equipped to handle like the environments. And so going like through that, I don't know, like what do you think? 'Cause I don't think I didn't get like nihilism out of it. Like I wasn't depressed reading this.
Oh, I don't know. I was kind of depressed.
Well, no, I wasn't. I wouldn't be like depressed. Oh, so okay, so like with the kid, right? So you know, the kid gets brutally killed, presumably by the judge. He killed.
And
He
well, it's
comes
implied that he's
down
killed. The judge kills him like he kills the children, which means that he rapes and crushes his body.
yeah,
He rapes him because
yeah,
he's had a thing for him since he was 16. You know, there's a
yeah.
few scenes in which it doesn't really reveal that directly, but there's some very obvious things, especially towards the end of the kid being the kid, right? When he's in that jail cell,
Mm-hmm.
and the judge comes to visit him, and he gives this spiel, and that's when he talks about, like, you're an interloper, you're a faker,
Mm-hmm.
and that's why you're being punished. That's why you're going to hang, right?
Right.
But he also says, like, I would have loved you like a son.
Mm-hmm.
And then he actually, in this one time, it's the one time the judge like expresses himself in a way that he doesn't in any other period. He's like, just let me touch you, just let me hold you. It's like a weird moment, and it just passes because the kid's like, no.
Yeah.
And he's like, all right then, I guess I'll be going.
All been different. That dance could have ended a different way, you know.
Yeah. Because the end of the story for the man at that point, it's like he's like 45 years old at this point, and he just happens to run into the judge. Like, it's not, he doesn't mean to, but that doesn't work in with the judge's worldview. So the judge thinks that this is destiny. Like, oh, we found each other again. You came here to see me, even if you didn't know, because you're part of this, whether you like it or not, and you can't just walk away. because that's the whole thing. I think that's why is the saving grace of the character of the kid is that he actually chooses to walk away from the judge. He chooses to do the right thing. He still suffers the consequences of his life, but he chooses to walk away from the judge. I know the judge kills him, but he's not going to be party to that anymore, even if it costs him his life.
Yep.
So to me, I think he has like a small redemption at the end. He makes the right choice after a lifetime of making the wrong choices and being confronted with this man, like you had said before, the only real family he's ever known. There's implications that there's weird stuff with him and the judge. The only person in the gang that warns the kid about the judge is the ex-priest.
Tobin, yeah.
Yeah, he's just like, yeah, you might not want to go over there.
Hey, he's got ears like a fox. Stop.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it, you got depressed after like reading the end of that.
Well, I mean, in some ways, because it's a universal truth that you just can't. How do you defeat evil? Is it even fucking possible?
Well, that's like saying how do you defeat like a rainy day?
No, I mean, in the kid's life, he actually defeats it in his way for himself. He defeats the evil, but the evil is persistent and it lives on, and it's very attractive and it's very interesting and it's provocative and it's alluring. Like the judge, is an enigmatic figure. Like he's a great character. You like listening to the judge, even if he's talking bullshit. You like being around him, and that is the essence of evil.
Yeah, no, it is. But no, I think the kid punched out by means of the judge, not doing that. I think if he had more time to ponder on this, he would have thought like, no, I can still have my redemption arc and then escape from this too. But I think he thought that it was a way to atone for, right? Because after his dialogue with the judge, right, he goes up and seeks out a prostitute, and then he's hanging out in the room, and like one of them, she's like, hey, the next John's got to come in here, so get the fuck out. You gotta go, and stuff like that, and just like being nervous. And I think he's nervous about like with his decision, like I'm going to go down this route, and I know I'm not going to I'm not going to make out of it. Like I think he's making
because he knows the judge and he knows that you can't just do that. You can't just he won't let you walk away.
I think he's grappling with like I'm tired. I'm done.
Oh, that's true too. But that's more into the nihilism of it.
The nihilism, but I'm saying I, as a reader, didn't get depressed out of this. Like,
okay. Well, that's. I'm being like a little hyperbolic when I say I was depressed, but like, it is like a very melancholy, kind of intense, sad ending. Like it is just because the whole book is like that. I mean, it's very appropriate. It ends very appropriately. I'm not saying it's like a bad thing or anything like that. It's just, but it makes you kind of contend with the ways these forces involve themselves in your own life in different ways, in the microcosm of it,
Right. Yeah.
How easy it is to kind of find especially if you're a person that's like the kid. It's like a little weird, a little lost. It just makes me think of like the current moment right now. How easy it is for young, impressionable, lost, fucked up people to be taken under the wing of like really bad people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you see that all the time nowadays. People even the man himself, even the kid, like he didn't really develop very much as a person.
No.
Even through the experiences, other than maybe starting to feel bad. Because even when he's talking to the judge, the judge is like, well, then why are you here then if you're not here to see me? He's like, because it's fun. I came here to have fun. That's what people do. What's it to you? Like he actually kind of reverts to the hermit's perspective.
Yeah. No, I came here for a good time, not a long time. So
many great lines in the book. God damn.
There is, but it kind of goes back like to the humor of things. I do want to get to the judge, but I know that's going to be a conversation. But like like Glenn, like he had like a lot of like one-liners, and then I like it's just a lot of things because a lot of like I think of like Coen Brothers, like Oh Brother We're Out There, like a lot
Yeah.
of like, situation
Well,
type of humor.
which makes sense that they adapted a McCarthy book.
Yeah.
They did No Country for Old Men, and it plays out like you would think a McCarthy story would play out, and it seems like their temperament, their proclivities match very well with that material.
Yeah, yeah, and I
Because
thought,
that's a very funny movie, even though it's also very dark and
hmm
you know.
no, absolutely dark, but but I thought like, oh man, like Coen Brothers, they could do this, but then I'm like, I don't know what they, and then we every Goes to the Library episode we do, I always say Zoller should do this.
Yeah, right.
Every single one, I always do that. But I thought about this, Sean, and I really thought about it. I'm like, what my dream scenario would be, other than Private Pile, Gomer Pyle being the judge, would be Kubrick coming back.
Oh, dude,
If we could
yeah.
resurrect like Kubrick and McCarthy to come back together and do this, because I think there is a lot of overlap with like a lot of themes what we do with because
Well,
we've done a lot of like Kubrick reviews, like but I think the the generational trauma and all that, I think he would have just fucking like nailed this. Like think of like the landscape, the cinematography of like a Barry Lyndon in here, right? And then just
mhm.
taking through the Kubrick lens of this, because I think like McCarthy and Kubrick, I think they would play chess together. I think they would. I think they would have a good time. It wouldn't be like a Space Odyssey 2001, where he just completely disregards the source material, right, and does his own thing. Like I think this would have been like intriguing enough for him. Because this was published.
Well, maybe though, maybe though, because Kubrick is notorious. His adaptations are notorious for like, I think I got a better idea.
No, it's true. But like what, like
But this is so rich. This is so rich. Like I don't like
exactly.
this seems. I agree with you that like thematically, it seems like very in line with Kubrick's work. And thinking about, especially bringing up Barry Lyndon is perfect because that's like just
Yes.
the idea of the landscapes and like the big frame and you
Hmm.
know, and so showing how small and vulnerable everybody is in this environment.
Yeah, man. Like, but I just like, oh my God, to be an alternate universe. See, if I was a judge, I could command the universe at my will. Make these things happen. Like, just imagine a Kubrick adaptation of that,
I
right?
mean, the last person that had this was John Hillcoat, who directed The Road, who directed the movie, the version of The Road, and he was working with McCarthy on the script. It was
Hmm.
the first time McCarthy was like, "Okay, I'll take a crack out of it." I think he
Yeah.
had kind of refused to do it for a long time, and then he passed away, so nobody knows what's going on with it. That was the last anybody knew of an adaptation of it.
Well, I heard he's back on the docket for that.
Well, the last news from it was last year. It was 2023.
Hmm.
I looked into it because I figured, we always talk
Yeah.
about if there's adaptations or whatnot, and there hasn't been any news in like a year, essentially, about what's going on with it. So it would be like another stalled attempt at bringing this. Before James Franco's tried to do it, he actually directed an adaptation of one of his books. This is a Son of Man, Man of God. But he actually had a cast together even for his too. Russell Crowe, and a few other people. The Russell Crowe's the one that sticks out the most. And then what's his name? Tommy Lee Jones also tried to do it too in the 90s. Oh, and Ridley Scott tried to do it in the early 2000s. And the
Yeah.
studio wouldn't give him the money because it was too violent,
Hmm.
too depressing.
Yeah.
Just like it, because like you said, like we've been talking about, there's no clear cut heroes. It's like very dense and ambiguous. And I mean, thematically, I can understand like probably like that is the difficulty of this adaptation is to
Right.
make the themes clear, because the
Right.
story, I can see the story. I can see the individual scenes,
Hmm.
but how do you
Yeah.
put that together in a cohesive manner? That's,
Right.
that's the
Right.
challenge.
Right. And keep it under 2 hours. Jeez.
It would have to be. I mean, I
Yeah.
feel like would have to be like a 2 hour movie. Anything other than that it would probably go on too long. And I think I heard maybe they were also tried to do like a HBO miniseries at one point. Somebody was trying to do.
That could, depending on who picked it up, like that could, I would enjoy that.
Oh, dude, if somebody does it nowadays, they'll like make it about like toxic masculinity and like Instead of like these deeper themes about human nature, it
Right.
would be some surface level dumb
No, it's kind of like
bullshit.
the True Detective season 4 treatment of that.
Oh, dude, it would be all about Native American trauma and
Yeah,
like that's what it would be about.
right. But they weren't painted pretty in this one either.
No, they are products of their environment as well. Like
Exactly.
this is the world. Like these men with the kid too. They go southwest to find this shit.
Hmm.
They actually want to be in the brutality. They're headed towards it.
Yeah. Well, dude. Look, well, speaking of like the Native Americans, like the one thing and that they brought up, and I was proud of myself because I'm not a literary critic or anything like that. But my first pass, like reading this is a true story. I'm reading through his description of the Apaches approaching them for the first time, and then the conquistador armor that they're wearing, and
Yeah.
that really stuck out of me. I was just like, wait a minute. I'm also not a history buff either, but I'm like, that was the timelines. Like, wait, this is 1840s. When to go look over. We're talking like a couple hundred years before, this time period.
Violence
Or
begets
whatnot.
violence, Paul. It goes all the way back.
It's the generation that keeps, dude, and just sitting there and just like fucking great. And also too, just thinking about being out there with nothing, and these motherfuckers running up on horses with conquistador fucking armor.
Dude, yeah. Imagine
That's
being
like
in that
that's
situation.
Road Warrior shit. That's Mad Max shit before Mad Max, dude.
Yeah. Well, actually, yeah, 100%. Yeah. Well, in a weird way, for the Native Americans of the time, this was their apocalypse.
Yeah.
It was because this is the end of this. It's another story that kind of is the end of the West. This is when the sun is setting on the West.
Mm-hmm.
Because it got even the title itself, Blood Meridian, or the redness or the evening redness in the West, is a metaphor. Because I didn't even know what a fucking meridian was. Not even gonna lie. Not gonna front. It's just the highest point in a circle.
Mm-hmm.
So you have the highest point in a circle, blood meridian. So we're assuming that's for violence,
Mm-hmm.
or the evening red in the West, which is when something is ending,
Right.
when it's setting, it's over.
And when you think about characters like the Judge making their way out there, when you think about characters like Bobcat, like going all the way from Australia out there, like this is the only place in the world right now where we can live this life, where we can do the dance, right? And it's ending. Either we don't know it, but this is where we're going, right? And it's like
it was a rush. It was a plunder rush.
Yeah.
Actually, there's a pretty good movie that takes place around this period of time. I sent it to you, and it's worth watching if you ever get around to it. It's Sam Peckinpah's Major Dundee with Charlton Heston.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of goes in because it's about the Mexican-Spanish Civil War.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what their characters actually kind of turn into a Glanton gang, kind of. And that's what they're doing. They're going across the border plundering.
Right.
They're getting their riches. They're like, we didn't get anything from this fucking experience. Like, we came out here, we fought, men died, and it feels like it's for nothing. We're just giving up. So we're going to go get ours. We're going to go get land. We're going to go get all their money, all this kind of shit.
Right.
It's a very brutal, mercenary, like kind of way of living your life. And it's because of their disillusionment with the bureaucracy.
Yeah. Yeah. Very
So
similar to Captain White. Didn't like the bureaucracy.
Captain White is a perfect analog or a parallel with Major Dundee, kind of. Major Dundee's more of a good guy. Like there's good guys and there's bad guys. Everybody's a little gray, but it's much more clear cut in that movie. But yeah. If you wanted to get like a visual sense of what the time period looked like, what people were doing, what they were up against, that movie is pretty good for that.
Yeah. So, one thing about the humor. I'm sorry. Did you have another?
No, you're good. Go.
The one thing I just want to talk about just about the humor, and then one of my other favorite characters in this was Toadvine.
Yeah, Toadvine's a good shit. He's like your buddy.
No, he's like a ride or die guy, and like it's part of like the humorous thing because like when the kid and Toadvine meet, right, like outside the bar going into like this like wooden plank to get to like this shitter, and then just drunk above it to just start, then try to kill each other, and then wake up. Hey, it's fine. Hey, yeah, no worries. Yeah, I tried to kill you, but hey, we're fine.
It's
Hey,
a very
hey,
young man thing to do.
yeah,
Yeah, we've
like,
all been there.
yeah, like, hey, I want to shake down this guy that owes me money. You want to come? Yeah, fuck it. Like, it's just like, it's just probably, that's like what a great like introduction to him, right? But he had one of the parts that I just like, I really like laughed out loud when I was reading it, and it was when the kid gets arrested for being a filibuster, right? And they're getting like then he meets Toadvine again, like, in the prison, and they're getting drugged through like the city. There's like all the shit and everything out there. They're like terrible filibuster, like prisoners, criminals, blah blah. The kid's being trotted around through the city, and then he looks at the kid. He's like, hey, so how do you like city life?
Yeah,
it's like that meme, right, with James Franco's like when he's got the
first time.
First time.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? It's just like, it's just
because he kind of
funny.
takes the kid kind of a little bit under his wing, because he's clearly like an older person, a little bit older than the kid.
Yeah.
And he takes him under his wing and he tries to like kind of guide him a little bit. He's, when we say that there's no good people, again, relatively.
They are, but then they're not, right?
It's relative. Like, he's not as bad as the judge.
No, exactly. And that's what's crazy, like, so complex about these characters is like, you get Toadvine, who is funny, right? And who does look after the kid, who we from the get-go, like, draw empathy for and are like root for throughout the novel, right? And then you get this. But then, he lets you down, sort of things. Like, most notably with when the judge kills a kid and scalps a kid after, like, playing with it and keeping it around for a couple of days, pulls the gun onto the judge. You do it, and the judge is like, either shoot me or put it away, right? And everyone's like, shoot the motherfucker, and then he doesn't. Why did he not do that, right? Is he a coward, or is he just like, like what? And then what am I going to do with the kid, or like what? What's going? You know what I mean? It's like every character.
Well, I think he has a sense of consequence.
Yeah.
Even because, like, dude, if you do that to the judge, like, you're dead. It doesn't matter if you kill the judge, and that's in that circumstance, because he has a few times where that's a possibility. Or am I mixing things up here?
You are with the kid being able to kill the judge.
Well, because he has one. He only has the one opportunity.
Toadvine had that. Like, that anger. He's like, you just killed a kid. Like, what the fuck? And then he did what you, as the reader, are thinking.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Well, like, why did you do that? And then,
well, this is kind of, they also live with the consequence of that. Like, the kid not killing, because the kid towards the end of his time in the Glanton gang, when all that blows up and the judge is out looking for him in the grass and stuff, like, he has an opportunity to go kill the judge, and he chooses not to. He chooses just to leave.
Mm-hmm.
And that obviously, if he had dealt with the judge then, he wouldn't have gotten killed later. So maybe that would have been like,
a
real redemption, like stopping evil, stopping this shit from happening. Because if you let the judge live, that the judge literally has an invalid. He's got like a retarded guy on a fucking chain,
a leash,
like walking around with a parasol with no shirt on and a rifle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, while he's ranting about property law.
Yeah, he's a sick fuck.
Yeah, absolutely crazy.
And they make mention of it too when the Glanton gang kind of blows up and they get like wiped out. Like, when the guys that were from the gang that were gone, like scouting or whatever, they come back and they're like, they find out that the Glanton is dead. They're like, does the judge have a gun?
Yeah.
Because they know the only thing that kept the judge
that's what Davy Brown asked, right? Because
Yeah.
Davy Brown, he went out to get supplies, gets jailed out for being, drunk and rowdy.
Yeah.
And then convinces a jailer to go like release him. Hey, I can go get you, like, go show you where my money is. Kills him, chops off his ears, adds it to his necklace, and comes out there.
Of
That's
course.
the first thing he asks. He's like, does he have a gun?
Yeah. Well, because they all know that the only thing that was keeping the judge kind of at bay was the community, was like the gang. And the fact that they had a sense of purpose, where Glanton falls apart. Because at some point, the government's like, we're not going to give you any more money for this shit. Can't be doing this shit anymore. And they don't know what to do with themselves, because that's their only purpose, was to make money by
Not
doing
only
this
did
kind of
they
stuff.
not
So
only
now,
not paying him, they put a fucking bounty on his head. They
yeah.
put like a $6,000 bounty on his head.
So everything devolves from there, though, because they're still continuing their carnage,
Mm-hmm.
and nobody understands why anymore,
Mm-hmm.
except the judge.
Yeah, and that's what's like so great about like Glenn, like the way McCarthy writes him was like he's going around like tying the Mexican flag to a donkey's tail, shooting up shit, shooting at dogs, and fucking just like going crazy because he doesn't know what he is. He doesn't have a purpose anymore, right? They're
Mhm.
all wandering children, dude. They are all wandering children, like abused children, products of the environment that don't have a purpose anymore, and then like no structure, and they just fucking.
Well, that's when
devolve
things get
upward.
dangerous, and their nature of being like kind of scumbag, duplicitous, and duplicitous is what is their undoing.
Right, right. And dude, like here's the thing, because you're talking about that scene about David Brown coming back asking, like, does the judge have a gun? Like, and this is in reference to the scene where the Yumas come on and just completely destroy the Glanton gang. And at that time, since the Mexican government was after them, what did the Glanton gang do? They saw a ferry operation and took over it. Killed people, blamed it on the Yumas, actually coordinated with the Yumas, like, hey, let's go do it. Say someone else did, but then ended up blaming on the Yumas. Like, there's so much double crossing. Like,
Yeah, and that's like, and it's so hard to keep that shit straight.
Right.
It's
right.
so hard to keep that shit straight because it happens so fast. Like that sequence, the stuff with the ferry is very brief.
Mm-hmm.
It's like really runs through it super quickly.
So important because when they need to get more supplies to restructure the ferry and they send Davey out, Davey can't go. And so Glanton's like, all right, I'm going to find this motherfucker. And if he's out whoring around in San Diego, then I'm going to fucking like shoot him. And by the way, I was in Old Town San Diego last month for a week. And let me tell you, reading this right out there and just like in Old Town San Diego, and I'm going to this, like they have like this whole historic village of like where they try to keep it. Old Town is like the birthplace of California.
Yeah,
the first like settlement there, and like it's just like, dude, just wild. And like reading this dude like out in there, like what they're referencing, dude, it was just a little tangent, like the little Andor experience. It was just like really cool. Like, oh, I'm here. Like made it like a richer experience, like if you will. But
like, I'm just like that Cormac McCarthy motherfucker.
I'm like
just
Cormac
in the
McCarthy.
spot.
I'll go to the place to read it. He went there to write it. I'll go there to read it. Right? I'm that committed. I'm committed to the bit. But he leaves the ferry operation to go find Brown, and then leaves the judge in charge. And then he comes back. What happens? You must come in and tear everybody up. Did the judge know what we know about the judge? I know we haven't started the judge bit yet, but about his whole philosophy about destroying everything only allows if I permit it. Think I didn't sign on for a fucking ferry operation.
Yeah,
I'm going to coordinate this. I'm going to bring these fucking people down here. Like
I don't know. I don't know if the judge would do that though.
He's the only one that survived.
Yeah, but he's like because he's the judge.
Judge.
No, but I think the thing that would maybe make me think that he wouldn't have coordinated something like that is because of his philosophy, and basically about what he says in the end of the book about the dance. He just takes things as they come.
The dance. The Glanton stopped doing the dance when he went straight off the path of like raping and pillaging and scalping to do this ferry operation. Did he see that as complacency and then stepping out of that? That's what I think.
No, I could totally, I totally can understand where you're coming from, 100%.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Because Glanton wanting to kind of get out of the situation he's gotten himself into and kind of move on is obviously something the judge would not be cool with.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't work for him. That's not part of his his mode of thinking.
Yeah, no,
but the only thing I can say though, because he is constantly talking about wrangling chaos and just kind of accepting the world as it is and bending it to your will. I mean, but not in a premeditated way. Like the judge is not very premeditated. Like he's kind of just reacting to things, and we don't know if what he's saying is like complete horseshit or not, because he's clearly just a very smart guy.
Mm-hmm.
And he's clearly very well educated. Like we said, like he's here because he wants to be here. He doesn't have to be here. He wants to be here.
Right.
And is he just getting one over on people? You know, just because he can talk better than the rest of them? He just sounds smarter than the rest of them. He's read more books.
Physically, like, intimidating presence, and like when you're like that. Because I think, like at the time, like the average height of a man was like 5'6", 5'7".
Yeah,
And he's like 6'6".
He's almost 7 feet tall.
7 feet tall. Like, you know what I mean? Like, how do you fuck with that, right? So, yeah. Did you have any favorite characters out of this?
I think Toadvine. I mean, I do like the Judge. The Judge is a great character. Like, how can you not? Like, how can you deny that? You know, it's like when I watched L.A. Confidential, I was like, I can't deny that Kevin Spacey gives a fucking great performance in this movie. Like, because he does. Okay, it was whatever happened in his life, it was worth it. No, but anyways, but like, yeah, so I can't really deny that. Like, the Judge is definitely the person that I probably gravitated towards the most, because it's where all the themes of the story kind of derived from, or a lot of what he has to say about the environment and the juxtapositions of like what is actually happening relative to what he says, how he feels about existence, how he feels about God. You know, I found that stuff just the most interesting stuff. So it's like really what stuck in my mind the most. But I'm trying to think. Like, I'm awful with names of characters, so you'll have to forgive me. But I think like a lot of the Glanton gang is actually pretty good characters. You know, like from Brown, Glanton himself, Toadvine, like we said. The ex-priest is a great character.
Mm-hmm.
Like a favorite character. I hate to be cliche, but I'll probably say the Judge.
Yeah, the Judge.
I mean, I know that's cliche. I know, but this is my first time reading this book. Everybody, calm down.
No, that's good. I really appreciate Bobcat. I keep saying Bobcat. Bobcat. And then, but like Toadvine, I was really, really, really partial to him as well. But I did like Glanton just because he just seemed like
he's kind of like,
where'd you learn the whisper, in a sawmill, or and then
he's like an exasperated parent.
Yeah,
like running around trying to keep everybody together.
In the Lord of the Flies, he's the older kid. He's the most like loud and forceful kid. He's got a handle on that. But like Toadvine, I just think he had he had the best liners, man. Like there's one like where they went to some cantina, and he's like, "Hey, what have you got that a man can drink with a minimum of blindness and death?" Like. And that's like if we're going to say the term McCarthyism, that is a McCarthyism right there.
Yeah, 100%.
Make a simple thing. What's safe to drink even more ridiculous, like with a minimum, but like not safe, but like kind of safe, right? What's another way to say kind of safe with a minimum? What do you mean by that? What can I have to drink with a minimum of that will cause a minimum of blindness and death? Well, I don't care if it gets hazy, right? I don't care if I pass out and potentially not wake up from this coma, but I don't want to do a sure thing. You know what I mean? But,
well, and that's kind of another thing that I like about the books, that the characters, even though some of them are not like, we don't spend a lot of time with them, but they are very rich, and McCarthy understands that he needs to make them real people. So they have moments of levity. They have moments of just hanging out. Like there's a lot, you spend a lot of time with them just kind of hanging out.
Yeah.
You know?
Yes, you do.
And I think that's so important to a story like this, because you want to be fair to these people. Like it's it's historical fiction. We're dealing with a specific time and place, and the specific attitudes of people at a certain time and point in history. And I think he's very fair to them. He doesn't really, I mean, the only person that's like a caricature is the Judge. But even so, the Judge is not really a caricature. He's just more gregarious than the rest of them.
Right.
I mean, like, Doc Holliday, this is a very staid thing in Western lore, or people like this, right? The erudite, well-spoken, hyper-intellectual gunslinger, like it is a thing. It is a trope a little bit, but it comes from a real place. Mm-hmm. Like as we were talking about before, like the memoir that McCarthy came across that informed a lot of the characters in the story, the Judge is described as that kind of person.
Yeah. Yes, yes, he is. Yes, he is, man. But let's get into the judge, man, because that's another like hilarious. So like on the like the humor bit of the novel, like how you're introduced to him, like going into this
Great, great
makeshift.
introduction.
Cool, man.
Great introduction. It lays the foundation for him as a character, the type of person that he is, but also the book, like it's all in the subtext. It's like it definitely has something to grind with the vestiges of the church.
You think so?
I mean, well, I don't know if well, it's almost like I think like McCarthy's saying that
Does
like
that have,
these people were kind of abandoned by the church because there's lots of dilapidated churches. There's lots of vagrants in them.
mhm.
Usually, if there's a church brought up, it's like it follows as an intense scene of violence.
Yeah.
And the judge's introduction takes place
Has
in
it
a
been the
church.
history of the church since its existence, right?
Yeah.
So it's just kind of like, this is what it is, and this is what it always will be. It will always continue to be this, even though it's like, not churches, but you like look what's going on, and not to go on like on a political like tangent, but like look what's happening in the Middle East right now. Like shit's getting blown. Shit's getting sporty, man.
No, there are still parts of the world
Right?
that exist like
Is
this.
it a critique on Christianity, or is it just the imagery on there to make one like think it's about a critique on Christianity?
Well, I think it's
Or is
there
it
to.
more of a commentary on the like anything that's like good, like human heirs, children or whatnot will be destroyed in this environment.
Yes, yeah,
That's
100%.
what I just want to be, right? Because I was thinking about that. I'm like, is he trying to say something like about this? Like there's like going like full nihilist here, right? Like there's nothing for you. Like look at these empty like um, halls of holy like this
Well,
stuff.
I think it could be a commentary on conviction of belief. Do people really believe what they purport to believe? Because you know who does believe what he says? The judge.
Hmm.
And oftentimes, like, and he talks about God and he talks about the nature of God and man, etc. His introduction, walking into a church during a sermon and just basically sicking the dogs on this poor son of a bitch, this poor preacher, accusing of fucking goats and molesting children, and
Yeah.
it's an amazing scene. It's an amazing speech that he gives, and it's actually one of McCarthy's more like engaged descriptions, because he talks about how he takes his hat off, and you think maybe he's doing it out of respect that he's in a church, but he's just doing it to wipe the rain off of it. Then he puts his hat back on, like, so the judge is in complete defiance of God and belief in a higher power.
Hmm.
Because people like the judge, as we see it oftentimes in the secular world, is that people put themselves as the highest authority. It's
Yes.
the highest ethic in the world, right?
Hmm.
We see that a lot, especially in the modern day with like activism, the way that people behave.
Yeah.
That's how they kind of put themselves as the most virtuous person, the arbiter of morality.
Right.
And I think maybe it's about the conviction of belief, because like, if you really believed this stuff, would you have allowed any of this to happen? Could somebody like the judge just walk into your church, tell a fucking completely crazy lie, and then you just believe him at face value?
Well, now
and then you kill somebody.
Mind you, it was a stand-up church. It was a tent.
I know.
Nobody knew like about this, right? So you did have like some leeway there. Like there's no continuity. It wasn't like an established church that he walked into where all the patrons like knew the pastor, right?
No, of course not. But he showed how easily you can subvert that experience. Yes. How easily you can go and change that, because that's what the judge is all about. He's a control freak. Mm-hmm. Nothing exists outside of his purview.
Right.
And it's a personal affront to him when it does. So the idea that people are giving themselves to a higher power, some abstract idea of like the good.
Right.
He finds that offensive.
And that's why you don't ask him what he's the judge of.
I guess so, yeah.
Right? That's why I don't. So, but here's what's really interesting about the accusations, like, he made like to the pastor. Come on. What did he accuse him of? Being illiterate and congressing with a goat, right? But that's like, we can get back to that one. But the other shock value one was molesting an 11-year-old girl.
Yes.
What other books upon books upon books, right? And people talk about the commentary of Christianity, because all the empty churches, massacred churches, blah blah. But what famous book do we know where we have an illiterate person that conversed with an 11-year-old girl? The Quran.
Oh,
The
okay.
Prophet Muhammad, pleasant peace be upon his name,
Yes. Yeah.
was
Exactly.
illiterate.
Put some respect on that.
It had a 11-year-old, well, 9-year-old, but they didn't consummate, or 6, they didn't consummate till 11. But he also had an 11-year-old wife.
Well, you got to have standards.
I'm just sitting there, right? I'm just sitting there, right? So you just described this pastor as a fraud, and by describing him as a fraud, you made him, you linked him akin to the Prophet Muhammad, and that was enough to make strangers shoot him. Just saying. I didn't write it. I didn't write it. I'm just asking questions.
Cormac McCarthy, why are you such a bigot?
Oh my God, Cormac McCarthy.
I mean, these old dead white men. I tell you,
Islamophobic. I'm glad he's dead. I'm glad.
Yeah.
He's dead.
Yeah. Actually, yeah.
Yeah, just like that pervert Muhammad. So.
No, for me, for real, I think it's a confession through projection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
he's actually probably talking about what he did.
Yeah,
he fucked a goat. He killed a kid. Like, because the judge would totally fuck a goat, like 100%, and not feel any qualms about it.
And you take the judge's account from Samuel, as my confessions, killed an 11-year-old girl. McCarthy clearly knew about my confessions. He clearly knew about this. So
no, 100. Oh, of course he did. Yeah, 100%. But the way that they kind of slowly reveal that through the book, through these kind of because it starts with just they go to a town, and there will be like a little passage about like people were lighting their torches and going out looking for a missing kid.
Yeah.
That happens like 5 or 6 times, and then it doesn't really come into focus until he starts kind of letting you know that the judge pays special attention to kids. Mm-hmm. Like he's even tries to like goad them with candy.
Yep. Yeah.
And that's when it clicked for me. I was like, oh,
here we go. Here we go. But yeah, man.
Because he doesn't just molest them and rape them. Like he brutalizes them.
No, he destroys them, man.
Because he can't stand the innocence of them.
He can't stand the innocence of them, and then he also didn't permit their creation, which he is not a part of, because he destroys. He does not create. Like that's his role in this universe, and this whole thing. So even like when McCarthy's describing it with Captain White's thing, where they're out in the desert and gives this beautiful description of it's dark, it's raining, the lightning comes out, and then it just like looks like just like complete horror, right? It just like even something that's beautiful in nature could still be horrific, right? Everything in this book that is supposed to be pure and beautiful gets destroyed. And what is more innocent, more pure, more beautiful than a child? You know? And that's what he's going to destroy, right?
Yeah, it's the ultimate.
What symbolizes civility, morality, and peace? A church. What gets destroyed, or what is the center point of an area of massacre, like violence? So, like churches in here, like this whole world is just so ugly that everything that's supposed to be that is inherently beautiful and is supposed to be respected, revered, and preserved, is destroyed, right? And that's
any type of achievement or progress that man has made for man. Yeah, I think the judge is like kind of in a weird way. He's like this ultimate naturalist, where he just like adheres to the natural order in his way of seeing it, which means like kind of primal nature from his perspective. Like, no, you can't do those things. You're a fucking animal. Mm-hmm. We're fucking animals.
Yeah.
Sometimes literally.
Yeah.
But
or even with the idiot, right? Mentally challenged person.
James. Actually, I remember his name.
Yeah, you can remember his name. James there, he takes the liking to him. Why? Because he is abnormal. This is not right, and he is treated as such, and he's going to continue to treat it as such. So you think he's being kind to him, but what is he doing?
Yeah,
he took him out of the cage, put him on a leash. He put him
turn him into a dog.
this is something that he approves of, is something that is not natural, right? And so that's just part of.
No, but for him, it is natural because it adheres to the hierarchy of power. Might makes right.
Right.
So like that's what he wants to do. He wants to be the most powerful, and he wants to bend nature to his specific vision.
Yes.
Of life, of what it's supposed to mean, what you're supposed to be getting out of it. And essentially it's kind of a grand, pretentious way to explain hedonism. That's kind of what he does.
Mm-hmm.
He does it at a few points in the book. He does it like at the kind of like in the midway through the book, and then he kind of reiterates that at the end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
About what is our pursuit? Like, what are we doing here?
Mm-hmm.
Like, why are we even here? Why do we even exist? Like, it gets very lofty in that sense. Like, what is purpose? What is the purpose of being alive? What is a man?
Right.
Like, these are very like deep, profound questions that, you know, we all grapple with, we all struggle with in our lives. Mm-hmm. And his answer to that question is like, is a horror show, because he comes out on top. Like you had remarked upon, just the physicality of people at the time. He towers over everybody. He might as well be a god to them. What he says goes. And he can fucking take your life from you like that. Doesn't matter. And he doesn't care.
Yeah.
It's just another thing that happened. It's just part of the dance. Everything that's happening is supposed to happen. There is no coincidences.
Exactly. Oh man. We didn't talk about the Jacksons at all. White Jackson and Black Jackson. What did you do you have
actually, you know what? Actually, I liked Black Jackson from what I recall.
Me too.
What do I think of them?
No, like what'd you think of that in support of the story? Like what because we're talking earlier about how like rich McCarthy is with all the subtext like in here, and like even though they have a very you joked like, yeah, the Glanton gang was actually woke as fuck because they're so diverse. They were doing DEI before DEI was a thing, right? They had the Delaware Indians. They had a Mexican Miguel, but they kept calling them they kept saying it wrong on purpose, and then that they have the use, and then they got albino with alopecia.
Well, it's like a reflection of the nature of like a gang like that, where they're kind of equal opportunists in a certain respect, and they collect miscreants, they collect lost people, and I don't think they discriminate because they don't care.
Right.
Like it's not like to them they're beyond these kind of. I mean, yeah, they're all still racist and they give them shit and all that stuff. But
did discriminate though. But they're within the gang, right? And then inevitably, Black Jackson ends up killing White Jackson after they have the scrap. He's like, "Is that what you think?" He's like, "That's what I think." And then he kills him. And then they go about. And then nobody cares. Yeah. And that was also a member of their gang. So they'll do the same. And even Glanton, like when they go to get their money to turn in the scalps, the only part where he has like some type of morals or whatever, he's like the governor wants to have dinner with him. He's like, I'm not going to eat without my men. Like where'd this prudence come? Like where'd this come from? It does that, but even in the gang,
well, because they're playing out a fantasy. They're role playing. Like they think that he almost envisions this as like an army, like
children, right?
Yes,
children, right?
And that goes directly into something that the judge remarks upon. He says all boys. Men are built to play, and war is our playground.
Mm-hmm. War was here before man. War was waiting for man, and war will be here after man.
Yes.
Right. So it's.
I also love. He says, "Moral law is an invention of mankind for the disenfranchisement of the powerful in favor of the weak." That says it all right there. That's who he is.
Yeah. So it's man. It's insane.
Because that's kind of what everybody's up against in this world, is it worth doing the right thing even if it doesn't benefit you?
Right.
And that's the judge obviously would say no. I mean, the judge, and I guess the kid is this way to a certain extent as he's growing up.
You can't ask the kid because he's fucking dead, but that was inevitably his decision, was peace with that. And that's why I think he's like, okay.
So he got like a tiny redemption. There is a little light there at the end, right? Mm-hmm. But before that, like when he's younger and he's growing up, he has kind of a deterministic view of morality where he judges right and wrong based on consequence. So if he thinks that something is going to like cause him problems, then it's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
If he can just do it and get away with it, then it's fine. Then that's right. That's kind of how he makes. That's his calculus.
Mm-hmm.
So like when I was talking about before about him kind of understanding, having a sense of consequence when he's faced, when him or Toadvine are faced with like the judge, an opportunity to take him out.
Mm-hmm.
They're doing the calculus a little bit.
Right. Yeah. No, I would agree. I would agree with that. I just on the Jacksons, and it goes on to my favorite scene of the book, though, and is when they go to Owen's restaurant. Do you remember this? And then the restaurant owner, goes and tells Glanton, and he's like, "Hey, y'all can eat here, but you got to find a different table because of Black Jackson." Like,
oh, that's right. Yes,
can't have him here. And like, he's like, what do you mean? And then Davy Brown tosses Owen a gun. He's like, "Well, shoot him. You don't want him here. Shoot him." And he holds his gun, and then Black Jackson poof, just freaking pops him. And the cops come and the cops get him, and they're like, "Well," like they completely deny. I'm like, "I didn't kill him. Did you have any witnesses? We didn't kill him." And the whole gang, they're all sense of loyalty. Like, yeah, we ain't saying shit. We didn't see him at all. But like that's like one of those, like, I just thought like that whole scene, like I would love this to be a movie or some type of film adaptation, just like to see that played out. Because I'm a sucker for this fucking like on your nose, like like badassery, like, "Oh, you want him gone? Like one of ours gone? Oh, okay, here." And then,
well, you do it. Yeah.
The gun here. Yeah, get rid of him. And he holds the gun now. "Oh, you have a gun?" Dude,
I sent Paul a joke earlier. I was like, I'm getting my notes together, and I sent him a note that says, "I imagine being in the Glanton gang is a lot like being part of Diddy's entourage." Because Diddy did shit like that, where he would like shoot somebody in a recording studio, and everybody would be like, "I don't know what happened." Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Actually, I think it was that scene in particular that made me think of that.
Or like, yeah, and kids getting diddled too, diddled by the diddly.
Listen, it's all coming back. It's all full circle.
It all comes back, right? So Blood Meridian really is just the Western civilization. It's just the world.
It's about East Coast, West Coast hip hop,
and how you do the dance, right? How you do the dance that's what determines everything. People who do, people who don't, right? And then and everyone can do it, right? As the judge says, even a stupid animal can do it. And it's how you're going to engage in it, right? So, man, dude. Like I'm telling you, we can let this sit for another year, read it again, and still find something new or a different like angle to talk about. Like,
well, because exactly, because there's so many things to pick apart. I mean, like I think religion is a theme in the book, but I had a hard time like deciphering.
I would say faith more.
Okay, yeah, that's fair enough. Yeah, I think you're correct. Faith is a better way to put it. Is a theme in the book, but like the only really takeaway I had of it was that like the judge stands in defiance of that.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not part of what he understands as like the material world.
Right.
Even though he kind of,
it's humanity, part of humanity, which he is defiant of. Right.
Yes, he's defiant of the man's spirit.
Mm-hmm.
He wants to break man's spirit to bend to his will. He wants to break nature.
Yeah.
Part of the cataloging stuff that he does when he's like drawing all the critters he finds, some of the people that he meets, etc., is to own them.
Mm-hmm.
The only person that knows that they exist after they're gone is the judge. The judge is the only proof that this ever existed, that you were ever alive. Is going to be in this book. Mm-hmm. Which kind of goes to like, the broad historical perspective of how McCarthy, I think, thinks about his work, about how the judge kind of thinks about who he is. The judge puts himself in a historical perspective, like almost viewing himself in the third person sometimes.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like he dispassionately kind of explains like his worldview and why he does the things that he does.
Yeah. No, that is what he does. He is speaking in third person, not like out loud because he's like too clever for that. But that's how he views himself as like part of that. Like he is a player. He is a player. Like, man.
And but there's this weird, it's not like nobility, but there's this weird sense to him that he's just accepting the circumstances that he's in And this is how he rises to the challenge. This is how the judge like lives. This is how he lives on. This is why he can't be beat, because you're all playing a different game.
Right. And
you're playing a different game with different rules that he doesn't care about.
And he'll never sleep and he'll never die. Right.
And that's why, this happens, we talk about, like, not to get political again, but like, it's kind of what happens with political parties.
Yeah. Well, yes, political parties, but also like institution, right? So if you want to extract, and this is like a gross like extraction of, like, I don't know, the allegory here though with the Glenn gang or with the judge though, but political parties, or it's really industries, or like military industrial complex, like if your purpose is destruction, what do? You prolong the destruction, you prolong the need, the requirement to continue your services.
Actually, yeah, that's a great way to put it. Like, because if all this stops, then the judge doesn't have a purpose. He doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
So he's trying to, I agree with that 100%. He's trying to prolong it in the same way that government and industries do with what they do.
Anything. Right.
Yeah, right. And so I guess I don't know. I guess that's just how the judge rationalizes his worldview.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's either life or death. Like, either you're going to be alive and you're going to contend with what you view the world to be,
for everyone else through his view, through his worldview, right?
Well, it's like life or death for him, because like if he doesn't have this environment anymore, if it becomes too industrialized,
right,
like then he's not going to have a purpose. He's not going to have a place, and he's just going to get killed.
Right.
And he clearly doesn't want that. Well, I guess he doesn't want that.
Right.
I don't know if the judge would care, because if the judge died, the judge would be like, well, that's just part of the dance. That's just part of what happens. Mm-hmm. It was supposed to happen. You were supposed to kill me.
Right.
Because he thinks of everything as like a grand clockwork.
Yeah.
Everything is moving the way it's supposed to.
Well,
and the time is always right.
But he purports that warrior's mentality. If I die, I'm going out in a blaze of glory. So if I die in a blaze of glory, checks out for me. So, but dude, so after you read this book, or even before you finished it but just stopped, didn't it just linger with you?
Yes. Dude, it's one of those things that gets in your brain and you cannot stop thinking about it.
Right. I throughout the days, man, I just constantly still thinking about this book. And and I think after I let it breathe even longer, like I said, I'm going to read this probably next year, end of this year, next year, who knows? But for me, the mental freedom and flexibility I have now, already knowing the plot line, already knowing the events and everything like that, and then reading it again and just being able to just deep dive into the text.
Yeah,
and that's what I'm really looking forward to now. But I've read a lot of things, and I think it's normal to have some things linger with you. You still think about it after you read it. I think that's natural. Yeah, I just read that, so now I'm going to think about it. But this is the lingering with Blood Meridian is really potent.
Well, it's because it lingers because it's speaking these universal truths that sometimes are very ugly, and it's hard for us to admit that that's the truth.
Right.
And that's the bitch of life. And that's kind of what that's what we're always trying to do, is kind of avoid the truth a little bit. Right. And we're trying to build things so we don't have to deal with these other things. And that's just part of our dynamic with the world, with nature.
And if we take it to outside the source material, McCarthy's interview, talking about the subconscious being older than language and how it's going to present things to you, is he's saying to us through the lens of Blood Meridian that this is a fucking grind, and more often than not, the house is evil. And yeah, that old adage, the house always wins. It can, but it depends on what you're going to do. Either way, if you don't do anything, you're going to die atrociously. But is there a case to be made to give it your best?
Well, is it moral to
Remember,
do
because
things?
this
Is
must not
it
be complete nihilism or not. Is there something that you can derive out of Blood Meridian that is worth the pursuit? Is there something worth doing, right? Because we see that scene where the kid is shooting the other kid, right? Yeah, you ain't going to make it anyways, right? And then he inevitably makes the decision, I'm going to check out, and then uh, go meets the judge, right? But is there anything you take away from it? Like, is there any scenario out of this where like this living in this world is worth it?
in the world that they're living in?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's the I guess that's the ultimate question.
Mm-hmm.
Is it immoral to do? Is it moral to do immoral things under the right circumstances? I guess that's kind of part of the question as well.
Well, yeah, that's part of the answer.
Well, because it's not always. Well, I mean, people rationalize themselves
Sure.
by saying things like that. But at the end of the day, you have to kind of adhere to first principles, and you have to apply them ubiquitously, regardless of what the consequences. I mean, that's how the judge lives, but just from the opposite side of the coin. And you have to have those kinds of convictions to actually be worth believing in. And so,
Right,
is it
so
would it be worth? What do you mean by would it be worth living?
So the nihilistic take, right, is like, yeah, it's worth living if if you don't fuck around with the dance, right? But if you don't want to like engage in that, but live, right? Carrying your Bible, even though you don't know how to read it, or like, or even if you did know how to read it, it doesn't matter. Like, if you want to live life in that, like, what is there anything in here that you can derive that, like, oh, this is worth it because of this? Because this is what, like,
It would be the same thing that makes life worth living now. It would be like the idea of because we're all products of our environment, products of our circumstances, this time in history. And we all know that not everything's perfect and things have been more difficult in the past. It's all relative. But you struggle through those things because you're building something for yourself that's more important.
Because even the kid just brought into this world by like just a rough life, still grew up and had moments of consideration for others, and he had some other moments, had experienced some good times, some bad times, and then arguably atoned and like punched out. He was still in it, right? So like, what are you gathering out of it, right? So this dance, if we take out like what this dance is he saying it's what you make of it? So no matter what you do, this world is brutal, and it's going to tear you apart if you're depending on your levels of precaution and like what you do and how you defend yourself. It's going to tear you apart, but you can still dance, or you cannot dance, right? But you can still be a part of this. Like, is that what he's saying? Like,
well, I think he's saying like, if you choose not to dance, you are still subject to the dance. Like, the dance exists.
You're still
you could live on the periphery of it. You could have a family in your life out in the West and trying to make it and trying to get by, but there's always going to be that lingering sense of dread, that opportunity, that vulnerability to people that, like I said before, that are playing a different game.
Mm-hmm.
By different rules, and they don't care.
You take the judges, like a story where he's talking about the harness maker and the traveler coming by, right? And then they had like a quiet family, and then under the lie that they're able to pursue, like a humble and respectable life, and then to find out at his father's deathbed that it was all a lie and he was destroyed, right? That was the closest thing we had to like a wholesome, like a moment. But no, it's just all lies. Like, this world, what is worth living in, right? Because that's what's like. Is his message complete nihilism, or like, what is he saying in here, or is there something that you can get out of it, right? And I know I'm just being coy and just like, and I've been enjoying some Mormon juice, High West, but like what is he saying, like, with this universe here? Because he's not just I don't believe that he's just saying like, oh, this is like a terrible place, terrible time, and and in this story, there's no happy ending. What's he getting at here with the dance and just the inevitability of fate? What do you want to do? Because like the kid throughout the novel, like had opportunities to go a different path, to go try. It's almost as if the universe was saying, you can get out, you can get out. Yeah, opportunity.
Well,
Like
it's the
like
consequences.
when Tobin and the kid are trying to escape the judge, and the wind has blown away their tracks. Right, they could escape, but then they don't. There's always this hesitation to deviate or to eliminate the objective evil that's facing you, right? With Toad Vine pointing the gun at the judge, the kid pointing the gun at the judge a couple times and escaping the judge, and then finding the judge again, and then going right back like into him, right? Like, what is he saying here, right? Is this just a nihilistic tale, or is this universe him playing with the subconscious? Like, you're in this world, it's completely brutal, but you can still make something out of it. You can still like get out of it alive.
I think so because you're seeing with the kid character, like you had said, he makes some bad choices, and it's about your individual agency, and that you don't have to be a victim of your circumstances once you have awareness of it. And the kid starts becoming aware of his circumstances, but still makes bad decisions. And I think ultimately that's you have to pay that debt. And that's kind of at the end of the book. That's what it is. But he still ends up choosing to do the right thing. And I think that is just kind of a grand example of that. Anybody can do that. You have to empower yourself to do that. You are an individual. You have agency. You can make choices. You don't have to go along with everything that you're
your own
up
bed.
against. Yes.
You can make your own bed just because you referenced Peterson earlier, right? So
yeah. Clean your room.
But but you can make your own bed and sleep in it too, right? And that's just kind of my take on that is just like whether it was in the 1800s or insert year today, right? The world's a messy place. The world is brutal, and there's always forces out there that want to destroy everything that is inherently good, right? And any like morality based off of faith-based religions, there'll be people to like destroy or challenge that as well. And then what do you do in this grind? Is it so much a mission statement, or is it so much a message of telling it like, what would you do in this situation? Like, what are you going to do in this world? Because I painted the world in this fictional time and place for you to imagine it, but it's not different than what's happening today.
No, human nature is human nature.
Exactly. It's not different as where it was when it was published 39 years ago in 85 to insert year 2024. Like, what are you going to do? Are you going to dance? Or are you not going to do? So to me, my takeaway of this is just like it's more like thought provoking. Like, well, like what do you do? What do you do with this? What are you? Do you have your faith? Are you going to? Is it best not to look down there into the thoughts, right? Or do you do that, or do you listen to the universe and to the signs and make better choices, right? Like, what do you like?
Well, it's almost like suggesting this idea to find your way through this kind of darkness is that you actually have to believe in something. You have to believe in more than yourself, because if you're just living kind of moment to moment for yourself for material gain, it's usually a very empty cause, ends in sadness. You don't actually gain anything from it, really. You're not building anything else. It's kind of like I was talking about, having a family, building things meaningful outside of like your material circumstances, outside of what you're trying to achieve material as a person. You have to have like a higher ethic.
Yeah.
And without that, you can be scooped up by people like the Judge, by the Glanton gang. Kind of in the same way, we mentioned earlier, Fight Club. Fight Club is very similar in that respect, right?
Right. So, is it a cautionary tale like Paul and Oak's Fight Club? Like, if you don't believe in anything, you believe anything. Like, do you like what? Like,
I think it definitely has a cautionary element to it for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's kind of warning you to not be a fucking dummy. It's like take some care with your heart and your soul and your mind.
Mm-hmm.
Like develop those things, because those things are
Yeah.
the things that can save you.
Right. But also be equipped for the environment.
Yeah.
Defend yourself. It's a nasty, nasty world. Defend yourself. Like you can you can do two things at once. You can have morals. You can be considerate of others. You can defend the weak, but you also have to watch your back. You also have to do this, and then that's
Well, being that person, it requires you to accept a responsibility that I
hmm
think a lot of the characters essentially don't want any part of. They
hmm
don't want to be adults, right? Like they
right.
don't want the burden of having anybody under their protection or like a ward of theirs. They don't
hmm
want any of that kind of stuff.
hmm No, no. Be a father.
I was going to say that, like, this is actually a story about fatherlessness.
This is a story of if you don't, if you are a shit father, look what can happen.
Chicago 2024. We could just maybe Spike Lee should go back and make Chirac 2 and like just do a modern day adaptation of Blood Meridian that takes place in Chicago.
Don't you see though, like how Kubrick would be perfect for this stuff?
Well, because he would make something very thoughtful and really like force you to pay attention type thing, like, and I would really love, because reading this novel, it reminded me a lot of actually watching some Kubrick movies when we were doing the Kubrick movies, because we really dove into those things. Like we were watching them on repeat for like 2 weeks and then reading everything we could about them, read the corresponding novels for whatever he was adapting. And I got the same pleasure out of this that I did with that, because it's so deep, it's so rich.
Me too.
And it makes you think. It makes you do some of the work for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It allows subtext to be subtext.
He doesn't even translate the Spanish that he uses in the novel.
I know.
Right? And so, like, and just fast forward, the kid, when he's asking a bartender, hey, can I sweep up this place for a drink or whatever?
It's a great scene.
Spanish, he says no.
It's and that's a great scene too. It's because it's kind of like the reintroduction to the kid.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's the first time I think you really see him do something crazy violent, like spontaneously, just like abruptly.
Yeah, and it's the doubling down of having a taste for mindless violence. So like dude, it's such a rich book, such a brutal book, and like it's a book that's going to stick with me for the rest of my life. I know it will. I know it will.
No, it's
imagery. There's imagery, as narrated in my masterful short, but like that will stick with you for forever. Like you can't unsee the things that you put in your mind from reading this. Like it's absolutely insane, and all those stupid like dinner party like questions. Who would you have dinner with, dead or alive? Like fuck, dude. Now it's McCarthy. Holy shit, dude! Like
honestly, yeah, because like the few interviews that he has done, he is a very fascinating person, and because of that inquisitiveness, the soft spokenness, just the thoughtfulness of everything he says, it's like a man that has the wisdom of years.
Yeah,
and I really love that, like about him.
Dude, it just insane, dude. Rest in peace, McCarthy. Let me tell you.
Yes, definitely rest in peace, Cormac McCarthy. But I think that it's just a lot of chew on. I like seriously, it's kind of like when we were talking about the Kubrick movies, to reference that again. It's like, should we just like do these again in a couple years?
Yeah.
Because like, we're going to be different. We're going to get more out of it. Like now that we've had this, like kind of gone through this gauntlet of getting our initial impressions out, like what more is there? What's more can we get out of this?
Yeah.
But
no, we're going to make a Zoobox documentary about the Kubrick experience, and then, but no, absolutely, dude. Like, I'm down for another McCarthy. Like, I'm going to read everything he's ever written. I've read the decision, and then, but yeah, if you the next,
I will be going parallel with you. So if you tell me what you're reading, I will grab the book and I'll start reading. Actually, I think I have his whole all of his books actually.
Nice. Well,
And
I think I might read The Road since you read The Road already. So I might
The Road would be a good one, and then we could pair that with the movie too, so that would be fun.
there we go.
Also, No Country for Old Men, you could pair that with the movie. That's fun. That James Franco one, I've never seen it, but he did one. I meant to look it up earlier. Also, but there is one, and it is a very Cormac McCarthy story where it's his only like screenplay.
Yeah.
That Ridley Scott directed, because actually when he met Cormac McCarthy back in the early 2000s, they wanted to do Blood Meridian. He got along very well with Cormac McCarthy, and somehow, like a decade later, 15 years later, he got Cormac McCarthy to write him a screenplay. And it was very panned when it came out, because it's kind of like Blood Meridian, where a lot of people just didn't get it. They just don't understand what's happening. So when you watch the movie, it's called The Counselor. And when you watch it, you're going to pick up on the tone, themes, and pace.
Right.
Like Ridley Scott successfully gets that on screen, and it's awesome. It's a great movie.
What?
It's called The Counselor. Make sure you watch the extended edition, because it's like 10 minutes longer, but it's actually 10 minutes that matter. And it's fantastic. I actually only saw it like a couple years ago. It was during one of my classic Big Lots movie rushes. I was like, I'll buy anything for $2.
Oh, it even has Javier Bardem in there?
Yeah, Javier Bardem, Michael Fassbender, Brad Pitt.
In here. Brad Pitt? What the
Brad
fuck?
Pitt. Dude, it is a Cormac McCarthy ass.
How have I never even heard of this? Well, I shouldn't be surprised.
Well, because it got panned. It got panned. Nobody talked about it. It did not make any sparks when it came out.
Wow, I gotta check that out. Well, also too, I'm the same guy that just found out that, dude, did you know they made 3 Guardians of the Galaxies?
Yes, I do.
Yeah,
I do.
dude,
Well, because the third one was really delayed because James Gunn got fired because of a Twitter controversy, and then he goes over to DC, and then he did Suicide Squad. Once everything died down a few years later, they're like, "Hey, will you come back and do Volume 3? Like, finish your trilogy?" So that movie was actually supposed to come out like 2017 or something.
I didn't know they made a sequel. So
You saw the second. You've seen the second one, the one with Kurt Russell.
No.
Oh, you never seen that one? Oh,
No,
okay.
dude, I haven't, because like I was in a cabin, family vacation, and my brother-in-law in his room, and I hear him like playing, not very social guy, and then he goes in and into the room, and I hear Radiohead Creep playing, and I'm just thinking to myself, I'm like, what the fuck?
Did you bust in? Like, what's going on? You sad?
Wait, like Radiohead Creep, and then my sister's like, oh, he's watching Guardians of the Galaxy. I'm like, when did they play Radiohead and Guardians of the Galaxy? That was all like 80s music. And like, oh no, it's like Guardians of the Galaxy 3. I'm like, they made 3 of them? So I shouldn't be surprised that.
No, you should cherish that. Cherish that you don't know. You don't need to know.
Yeah, something.
Let me take these slings and arrows for you, my friend. No, it's fucking awful. I don't know. I mean, those movies, out of the Marvel movies, they're probably on the better end of them.
Mm-hmm.
But they are what they are. They're bloated messes. It's just like all fucking Marvel movies are.
Mm-hmm.
I've been off the Marvel train since like 2015. Like, I just don't care about them at all. And as soon as Endgame came out, that was like kind of the end of that era, that cycle of characters or whatever. I just completely checked out. I haven't seen anything.
Right.
Because it was one of those things I'm like, why am I watching these? I don't like them. Like, why do I watch every single one that comes out? I don't like a single fucking one of them.
Well, hey, man, you got to right your wrongs by, getting to some
I'm not even
grown-up content.
I'm not even kidding you. I'm like, I need to start reading like the classic novels, like the classic American novels. Like, I need to read Dostoevsky. Like, I need to read these things to be just like a fully formed person.
Yeah, no, I've never read Moby Dick. That's also on my list.
I've never read Moby Dick either, so I'm down.
You're down?
Of course, I'm fucking down. I want to read substantial books.
Let's pause on McCarthy, do Moby Dick, and then we'll go back to McCarthy.
Really? You want to do Moby Dick next?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I do.
All right. Well, let's do it. And then can we pick, it doesn't need to be a major focus, but after we read the book, can we pair it with the Gregory Peck movie?
Yes.
Okay, cool. I mean, it's not going to be like a featured big part of the review or whatever, but I want to just watch it just for context.
No, I'm down because I never watched that in its entirety. So
yeah, I haven't seen it since I was like 9 years old.
yeah,
My Nana had like 3 tapes. It was Saint Bernadette, the Miracle of Saint Bernadette, the Weeping Mary, the Children of Fatima, and Moby Dick. Oh, and Joan of Arc with Ingrid Bergman.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah, I used to watch them all the time at Nana's house.
Yeah, well, after knowing, yeah, that checks out. That checks out.
Yeah,
it's like going to my grandfather's house and trying to find a John Wayne movie.
Oh, actually, the first time I ever saw Rio Bravo was with your aunt.
Yeah.
She got me down in the cave. I had to drop something off.
As they do. She was a real judge. You know what I mean?
Yeah, probably. I didn't know where I was. I didn't know I was in the spider's lair, watching Rio Bravo.
Why are you giving me candy?
Yeah. Actually, I think she did. She's like, "You want some pie or something?"
Probably.
Like,
they had pies.
I remember my mom was like, "Where the fuck have you been?"
Yeah.
I sent you over there
to Adirondack Cola.
Yeah, and watching Rio Bravo. But yeah, no, I mean, I'm totally down for Moby Dick. Like, I want to just kind of experience a lot of these things that I haven't, and I think are kind of culturally and important parts of like the past 100 years of human existence.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
So much has happened, especially in literature, in the past like 150 years.
Yeah,
like substantial works. Like Jordan Peterson said it best. He's like, sometimes some of these old authors, they got there before the philosophers did. Like, they wrote stories that were actual philosophy, but just couched in a narrative. They didn't intentionally do that, but they're just talking about the human experience.
Right.
And that is what reveals itself.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of which, like, Tucker Carlson, I'm a big fan of the Tuck, right?
Yeah.
But one of his things, he revisited a lot. He's like, name a great novel that happened post, World War II, blah, blah. And now I'm thinking, like,
Blood Meridian.
Haven't you heard Blood Meridian? Haven't you heard of this McCarthy fellow?
Do you think Tucker Carlson would like Cormac McCarthy?
I think the Tuck would appreciate it.
Okay.
I can text him on Signal and see if you've seen it already.
Yeah, you could, and he's gonna write back. He'd be like, "The judge rules." Yeah, I'm going back to Russia. I was joking.
Don't you talk about the Tuck like that?
Don't you dare! Don't you fucking dare, dude! You crossing the line, pal.
I'll fucking kill you.
That's a goddamn patriot right there. What the fuck?
It's the Tuck, Mike Lindell. No, Trump, Tuck, Liddell. Okay, that's like my Rushmore. There's 4. Stone Cold.
It's like this. It's like the judge said. It's like you're party to the dance or you're not. And in this world of punditry, it's either you're a Tucker Carlson, which is the righteous path, is walking away from the dance, or you're Cenk Uygur from the Young Turks, who's deeply steeped in the dance. Or you're Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro too. You're deeply steeped in the dance. Candace Owens, deeply steeped in the dance.
Yeah.
Carrie Lake now, deeply steeped in the dance.
Yeah. Well, there's 2 types of men and women. Good night, folks.
Good night, everybody. All right. Thank you for watching, everybody. Thank you for listening. This has been me and Big Paul talking about Cormac McCarthy's seminal 1985 novel, Blood Meridian, or The Evening Redness in the West. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And we'll see you guys next time. Apparently going to be talking about The Counselor, Moby Dick. You just got kind of like the list. So look out for those things in the future. Hopefully it doesn't take us a year. But
read it too, so we sound more coherent.
Yes, this is very important when you listen to any Zoobox review that you have seen it before, because I have no interest in just recapping the plot for you. Zero interest. You can go read a Wikipedia article if you want to do that, guys.
Yeah. And we'll never do it better or as good as the author. So just read it. That'd be awesome.
Just read the books, guys. Reading is fun and enlightening, enriching. I feel like more of a grown-up now,
Yeah, me too.
That kind of came down. I was like, oh, Maybe I just haven't read something so substantial in a while that like made me think about my soul. You know? All right, everybody.